There we go. I'm going to notify the old discordance.
Discordance.
We are live in all caps because I've got that kind of energy right now. I've not tagged anybody and I'm not going to respond to the messages that I've just seen on Discord because I'll get distracted. So, hi Lizzie.
Hi, Hannah. Long time no see.
I know. It's not like we literally just had dinner together or anything. What are you drinking?
So I am drinking the amazing bramble and lemonade that you just made for me. Plus, that's this. Plus, of course, because the type of mood I'm in is destroy my sleeping schedule.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you still had that left, to be honest.
Yep.
Good. Okay, cool. Right, well, I've just cleaned my glasses so that I can actually see through them. So that's nice. And I have the same thing because I made them, so.
Yep. And it's a Friday night, so, of course.
I immediately went to burst into song Katy Perry Last Friday Night. No regrets. Okay. So, for the minimal number of people that are currently watching, just so you know, the Lunar Book Club is a club that I started through Waypoint Books, but as part of my Discord, where I got people on my Discord to pick a genre or a genre prompt, and then I would find us a book that I tried my best to fit that genre prompt. Some of the books were an absolute success. Loved them. Great work. Other books were horseshit. Didn't like them. Did not enjoy. And what I'm going to do is every time we talk about a different book, I am going to put a banner at the bottom so that you can see the book that we're talking about. So if you want to skip spoilers, if it sounds like a book for you, great. But this is very much going to be an all or nothing. We're either going to be like, this is the best book, you're going to really like this, or this was horseshit. I don't think there are any books that are just kind of like middle of the road. For me, anyway.
There's a few for me that are middle of the roads.
Interesting.
I think you know the ones that I'm talking about, to be honest, Hannah, because I think I've spoken to you already. So if this feels deja vu to you, Hannah, it probably will be.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt. Because, like, this is the thing. It's part of the reason I was hoping Ali would be able to join us. She can't. She's got a doctor's appointment. But only because I've not been able to catch up with her in the same way. It is what it is. So, yeah, right. I was just looking. I thought she'd text me, but it was someone else. Right.
I just want to commend you for this beautiful background. I really like it. It's a nice colour. Did you make it or did you
No. Classic internet, stolen, not my art, etc. But I thought it would go with the whole vibe of like clouds and lunar stuff. Anyway. Okay, we're gonna try and do it in order. Because I've got the tabs in order, so I thought we might as well. I know we'd said that there's a different order in the order that we read them. But I know for a fact that we both read the first one.
Yes.
So, Cold Boy's Words, for those who don't know, is a literary gothic novel about people that are at the end of their rope. It's sold as this, there's a ghost in the woods, you're not entirely sure what's happening type thing. But I found that actually it was far more a story of empathy and kind of like social care. It was very like commenting on that. But there is also a murder mystery element to it as well, which I wasn't expecting. So, because I remember we talked about it in the car when you and I were halfway through it. Because did you read it? You read it for one of the start to finish sprints, didn't you?
I think so. I think I'd only read like a chapter. And then for what I think it was like one of the first ones for the start and finish sprints, I just went through it. And yeah, it definitely is sold more of a ghost story, but the more you get into it, it is literally just about people and how fucked up life can be sometimes.
Yeah.
And there is definitely a murder mystery within this and a ghost story within this, but it's completely not what you expect. Like, especially if someone says to me, "Oh, a ghost story," I have a completely different story in mind than what this gave me, which was what I loved about this book. So, spoilers, I really loved this book.
Interesting. I don't think that's really going to be a spoiler, to be honest, because I think I'm going to say that I gave it 4 stars, I think, in total. it wasn't quite a 5 stars for me. And kind of because of what you've just said, because we were promised this very particular kind of ghost story and we didn't get that, that is what brought it down for me.
I also gave it 4 stars. I was just checking my notes.
That's fair.
Because it was a long time I read this.
I get a real bee in my bonnet about ghost stories that pit themselves up as ghost stories and then go, actually, there was never a ghost. It was either all in your head or it was just people being people. And I guess because of this instance, it's the latter. Like sometimes the it was all in your head can work. But with this one, it was just bizarre. It was bizarre the way the pieces all fit together. So I think, I mean, I've put the Cold Boys Wood discussion thing at the bottom. There are going to be spoilers, so I think we just need to like dig in. You have two main characters. You have an old man who lives by himself, and you have an old lady who lives in the woods.
By himself.
He's got like 1,000 cats. You're right.
Like he is not alone. He has 1,000 cats that he pretends that he hates. Mm-hmm. And like the entire time you're with this character, there's a cat that inconveniences him in some way, and he grumbles and grumbles and grumbles about it. But does he stop the cat from doing the thing that is, hindering him? No. He lets the cat live its life.
Mm-hmm. And then, how did you feel when the cat died?
I hated it.
Even though it died gently.
I think that might have been one of the reasons I gave it 4 stars and not 5. Because I hate animal death, and yes, it was done in a really gentle way, but it was still very sad. I don't like animals dying.
No, I think that's fair, and I thought the way it was done was part of the bigger metaphor of like life continues, because obviously the idea that this cat died and then he discovers another kitten, and in his mind it's like a reincarnation thing. I thought that was really interesting. But I did feel like his entire storyline was kind of boring, in that I thought that like in it, I guess I kept thinking something would happen. I guess because he was such an aggressor in like the way he responded to things and how angry he was all the time, I expected something to happen.
Yeah.
But kind of just being like, oh yeah, my ex-girlfriend came round because she's worried about me. She's married to someone else, but she's worried about me. And oh, by the way, there's some crazy lady that lives in the woods at the end of my garden.
Yeah, but I kind of liked... So, because you had the old lady storyline, which really was where the crazy kind of like strange things were happening. And his storyline was more kind of like seated in reality, but there were still flashes of these really strange, odd pieces of his life. And I felt really sad for him the entire book, because he has very much chosen his own path. And because of that, his life has ended up where he's alone in this massive house with like 1,000 cats. Like, and that's all he has for his life to show. And like, whenever he sees anyone, he like yells at them and tells them to bugger off, and he's really rude to everyone. So I just felt sad for him. But
I felt sad for him when you find out why he's still living in the house and why he can't let it go, and the fact that he literally discovered, like, trigger warnings for suicide. He discovers his mum's body in the garden, and every time he goes to the sink, he can see the tree where she hung herself. It's brutal. And I think there was a lot of moments like that where Carol Birch would have these really quiet moments that were so fucking insidious. And it's a case of you're kind of caught up in this. It's written very gently, so you could almost be lured into a false sense of security. And then it's like, oh, I'm crying. Like, it's like this thing's kind of come out of nowhere. But I definitely found the old lady storyline more sad, because it was a very kind of Peter Pan type story where she kept trying to like run off to the woods, and it was almost like a witch lady just kind of like trapped, not wanting to return, not wanting to go to her daughter. Her daughter's response to her mental illness was so sad.
But it was also very real. Like, a lot of things has obviously happened in the old lady's life. And I don't know, like the daughter is at the end of her wick, right? Like she is
Mhm.
completely done, like, and she's had to deal with her mum's bullshit all her life, right? And I I can definitely I feel that way. Like I have a mum
Mhm.
who's chronically ill. Like I lose my temper with her all the time.
Mhm.
And I feel like I could see myself a lot in the daughter. And it doesn't make it okay. It just made it easier for me to empathize where the daughter was
Mhm.
coming from. Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's brutal, but it's what happens in real life when you live with someone who has chronic or mental illness that you have to deal with every single day, or at least every time something, you are the person that has to go and sort that thing out. You snap, you lose
Mhm.
patience with it, and you're like,
It's exhausting. It's
yeah,
it's emotionally and physically exhausting. And I think because there is such a stigma around being angry, because like obviously ableism, right?
mhm,
So it has this knock-on effect where any kind of negative feeling you might have towards something, in the same way that like feminism like is built to kind of destroy the patriarchy. So anytime a woman does something that benefits just women, that's not feminist. But people get mad at it that it's like, oh, it's one rule for you and one rule for me. Why aren't you championing all women? And it's like, because people aren't binaries. Like, they don't work in that. You're not either good or bad, tired or energetic, ableist or not. It comes in waves and it comes in grey areas. And I do feel like this book lived in a grey area, which was really interesting.
that is where I liked it though, and I think that's a lot of the reason why people might not like it, because I definitely don't think Cold Boys Wood is anything you should pick up without. I think you need to look up the content warnings because, as Hannah said, there is a lot in here. A lot of it's mental health and suicide stuff. Like there is a lot of mental health stuff that goes on in this, and I think that's important to know before going in. But the way this is written, I just don't think people who don't like strange books will understand in the same way. And like I loved the beginning. The beginning of this book, hello Emma, got me by a chokehold. Like as soon as this book began and there was a mention of a boy
Mm-hmm.
who was dead in a field, standing like a dead boy in a field in front of the woods, I was like, I am here. Like this has begun. But then the book decided to go in a completely different direction, and the cold boy in front of the wood was just the catalyst for everything in this story. And that's so
Mm-hmm.
interesting that it all goes back to this one moment in a car where she saw this boy in the wood and she thought she was home, right? And like that is so, it's incredible to me that even at the end we are brought back to that image of the boy standing in front of the woods. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I loved it so much, but I also don't think there's not enough that really happens in it. When you
No.
think back, nothing really happens
No.
in this.
And that's what makes it literary. All the conflict is internal. All of the stuff that both characters are dealing with is their own inherent struggle. It's already happened. He's
Mhm.
dealing with the death of his mother and the breakdown of the relationships around him. You know, his friend who is trying to make conversation with him, but only on their terms. The girlfriend who just wants to make sure that he's okay, but is not interested in being in a relationship with him anymore. But the same as her, like she's also living in this life of her trauma has already happened. And the way that she's dealing with it is unhealthy. Like
So
running away to the woods is not a good idea.
he just
But
takes a fucking tent and pitches it up and goes, "Well, this is my life now. I will go into town to get like food when I have to, but like this is my life now." And like the scenes where like the people that go out and help, I can't remember what they're like the help workers go out to
they're
teach
social workers,
her.
yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so sad. Like, because they're trying to, and she's like, fuck off, leave me alone. Like,
Mm.
she's literally like, I'm happy here, I'm fine here. And they're like, no, sweetie, like, winter's coming. Like, you're not gonna
Yeah,
be.
like, and this is the thing, like, she talks about how like refreshed she feels by like bathing in this ice cold stream, and how like in tune with nature she feels kind of sleeping amongst dirt and stuff. And it is a very kind of surreal description, because it's from her perspective, you're like, that sounds lovely. But like there is that rationale part of your brain the whole time going, she could die. Like it's so cold that she can see her breath. She's sluggish. She can't move very fast. And there was a real kind of like foxes and hounds vibe when they were looking for her. because she just feels trapped. And she doesn't want to go into a home. She doesn't want to be given housing. She doesn't want any of that. She just wants to be left alone to live in the woods.
Until she dies.
Yeah. And it's like, it's really sad. But yeah, I found that whole thing really, really bizarre. And I was definitely intrigued by the murder mystery element of like working out what had happened. And I thought it was really interesting, the plot twist at the end, that like the whole thing, right? Because like the whole way through, again, spoilers, it is clear that someone she knows has died. Like it's her daughter. She's got two. She has one by the end. But there's this whole thing where she is kind of describing her daughter and how wonderful her daughter's relationship is with the father. And the whole way through, I was emotionally preparing myself for him to have like sexually assaulted and killed her. That's where I thought it was going.
Where it went was so beyond where I thought it was gonna have gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, I have like flashes like of images of when she goes to oh my god, like honestly, when she goes to find the bones in the pipe, right? And I'm like, if this was a TV show, this would be insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the idea that he was complicit and then killed someone to cover it up, and then in a rage she kills him. Like all the pieces, they were so well set up that I was on the edge of my seat the entire time it was building up. And it was a real kind of like Scandi noir drama, right? It wasn't like your stereotypical British murder mystery, which is what I was expecting. I was expecting either like a classic ghost story or like here's the procedural elements. But because she can't be trusted, both characters are completely unreliable as far as like narrators go. I love this, by the way, like nodding along, because they're both.
All right, Emma, you don't need to read this book now because we have just
told you how it ends.
Plot. Like I will just tell you, Emma, nothing else happens. This is it.
It's here, but it's such a bizarre experience to be like, I understand where I thought this was going. It's gone in a different way. I don't know where my head's at with it. Like it was a very, and again, I think that's why I gave it 4 stars, because at the end I was just kind of like,
see, that's interesting. That's really interesting because that element of the story and the way that it went, it being completely not the way I thought it would go, reminded me of the murder of Graham Catton. Because the murder of Graham Catton to me had a different direction that most of those go. And he gave me that same vibe. Completely different books and completely different written books. Like that, it's not the same writing style or anything. But for me, those two books, the 2 books like Cowboys and Murder of Graham Catton, both had 2 diverging paths that I completely did not see coming.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. We're going to start talking about another one in a second. You might not know anything about that one either. But yeah, so I don't have anything else really to add, because I think of all of them, this one I was kind of like, yeah, I like this. It's going to be an interesting, like it's a very interesting book club pick. And I think like a lot of the chat around it was that the writing style was really jarring. I didn't realize it was set in the UK for ages. I fully expected it to be set in America.
We said that to each other in the car. We were like, where is this set? And I was like, I don't know. It seems like a small town, like in the middle of nowhere, or maybe like in Washington, like somewhere where there's forests, it's cold. And when it was the UK, I was like, what the fuck?
It was like Gloucester or something like that. Like it was so random. And I was just kind of like, I don't know.
Who was your favorite?
It was very bizarre. So. Huh?
Who was your favorite character? I'm using this book club book that you gave me, and one of the questions on there was, who was your favorite character?
Who's my favorite character? I don't think I really had one. Maybe the grumpy cat, because obviously. But I feel like of the 2 main characters, I enjoyed the woman's perspective more.
You like Lorna.
Lorna, that was it.
I liked Dan when I wrote this review, the old man. And I think I liked him. From thinking back, I was just like, I know someone like this. We all know the grumpy neighbor.
Yeah, it's me.
No, not you. No. I used to live really close to this old guy called Trevor, right? And he lived in this massive farmhouse. He was a widower, and like his daughter lived in the village. and like he was one of the farms closest to us, and he reminds me so much of Dan in the way that he's just like, he will accept help, but he will grumble about it all the time. So I
He
feel
will
like
begrudge it the entire time.
that's probably why.
And
I also tabbed this book to shit when I read this. This is the only book in the book club that I did tab, and I will say this was a cracking start, and I'm sorry to say it's about to go downhill from here.
Oh, absolutely. I know nothing about any of the 10 books. It's fine, because of those 10 books, I finished 3. And a couple I started today, because I was like, well, I need to have something to say about them. So fear not. But it's made me very excited for my 2023 book club to arrive. I'm keen to be involved in these discussions. Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, you're more than welcome to jump on and just pipe in wherever. But let's move on to the next one, because you will have more to say on this than I do, because I didn't finish it. And to be honest, considering this was the second book chosen, I must have known in my heart of hearts that I didn't give a shit, because it was a sci-fi. And it was sold to me as a Firefly-esque sci-fi. I got 33 pages in. I read 6 pages the other day whilst we were in A&E. Lizzie was sick. She's fine now. She's not
dying.
She's on the mend.
Oh, just
and I could not have cared less. Here we go.
Emma! Oh my god, this is the first time we've actually been on stream together and spoken face to face. You can bully me in person.
I know.
Emma, Lizzie, Emma.
I'm just in my bed. My Chinese was disappointing, so don't mind my little friend in the background. I just see this giant alien head, just like
perfect timing, because this is all about aliens. So I feel like it was.
I'm sold. Wait, I'm saying I'm sold, but I feel like Lizzie said it's going to go downhill, so I feel like maybe I don't want this book.
I mean, you can have my copy. It won't cost you anything. I'll unhaul it to you, because I am not a fan. I DNF'd it.
You mean you're going to add to my TBR, and I'm copying you in Olivia's thingy-majig, and I am +10 at the minute.
Nice.
I'm also doing it for my NetGalley, and I'm +18 on there, so living my best life.
Fair. Hello, Emma. Okay, so Bluebird. Emma, have you heard of Bluebird before?
Yeah, it's a brilliant book that I've just found out exists.
Okay, so I have about 110-ish pages left to go, and I read about 200 pages while I was waiting in A&E for like 8 hours. I had to rate the service today, and I gave them a poor, and I said there was a really long wait time, and I feel like some of my symptoms were ignored, but like that's a whole other story. This was a bad choice to take to A&E. This is boring, right? And I don't understand how a sapphic space pirate story can be boring, right? It should be full of adventure. I think Star Wars, okay, fun, silly adventures with, pew pew guns, Firefly, great, another silly space adventure with pew pew guns. No, this is boring as hell.
No.
I'm now to nearly at the end of this book. It took me until 3/4 of the book to even care about this story. And the only reason I kept reading it was because I had no other choice, because my phone was at 3% and I had to text Hannah to come back, because I sent Hannah home from A&E to eat food because she was getting on my wick and being completely and I was like, no, you need to go and eat, because you're gonna get real grumpy soon, so go home and eat and I'll wait. So I was forced. It was forced reading. And
I'm just looking at the Goodreads reviews, and it's literally either 4 and 5 stars raving about it and saying it's so fun and fast paced, or like 1, 2, and 3 stars being like, I'm bored.
There is no in between with this book.
I'm so confused.
I think this will get a 3 stars, because I will finish it now. Like I'm far enough in to warrant that I'll just finish it. Like I want to know what's gonna happen next, which is the first time since I stopped reading it. But the main character is so unlikable, and I don't think that was on purpose. Like it feels like you're supposed to root and like her, she's just fucking inept.
Mm.
Every decision she fucking makes, I'm like, I'm sorry, what logic was used there at all? And like, if she's supposed to be like, oh, I'm doing the spur of the moment, bitch, this is how you get people killed. And then, lo and behold, something happens, and she's like, oh my god, it's my fault. Yeah. Why are you shocked? She's like, oh, my sister's been captured? How could that be? I left her there. She chose to stay there. She must have been safe. I'm sorry. You stole some really big, ambiguous plans, and you left your sister within this faction, and you are confused that they're now using her as bait.
It sounds like a poor man's Chilling Effect, and I've read like the first half of Chilling Effect. I didn't finish it, but I obviously I sent it to you, Emma, because I was really enjoying it, and I was like, well, I know you prefer sci-fi. I prefer fantasy, and it reads like a sci-fi, but it reads like they're trying to go for Firefly. Loads of action. Here's a funky cast of characters. Here's people that you're going to root for, even though they're not always the good guy. And I just didn't give a shit. I've never cared less about a book, because usually my emotions swing very hard one way or the other. I'm either like, I hate these people, I'm not reading this book, or I love this book, let me tell everyone about it. To be like straight down the middle of like, I don't care. I don't care. And it was one of those ones where like I kept putting it off because it was a sci-fi, and because I read the first 33 pages in like 10 minutes, I was like, this is such an easy read. I will definitely get back to this, and then never prioritized it. Like, didn't even consider picking it up for a year.
The only saving grace with this book, there is one saving grace, is there's one character that I have liked, like, and she's been decent throughout the whole thing, is Ginka. And she's one of the, like, she kind of turns up out of nowhere, shoots some people, is real grumpy about everything. She takes drugs, just in full view of everyone, and she expects a free ride. And I'm like, you know what? Fair play to you. Like, you did just save her life. Like, you should get a free trip on her spaceship. And then, like, they go to another spaceport after escaping, like, these assassins. And she's like, oh, you go about your business. I'll just refuel your ship. And then she refuels her ship. And then, like, she's so grumpy about literally everything. But there are twists and turns in this book. And I tell you, when I guessed the two big ones have been revealed, they're not that big. They're not that big secrets, to be honest. Like, and nothing shocked me. I was like, oh wow, yeah, these two other characters we've been following, Ginka can't be one of them. That would be silly, right? Well, why would we be following them? No. And like, where she's hidden the plans as well is also not super surprising either.
See, look, my Discord thing that you shook your head at, I am assuming, worked.
Discord thing that you shook. No.
Oh, you were looking at your phone and you sort of shook your head. I was like, oh, that's it, me putting on the Discord that I'm now on the
screen.
No,
I liked that. What I shook my head at was the fact that my mum thought it'd be a really great time to call me.
Oh.
I know what is she like? So I said no. And then I texted her and was like, I'm on a live stream, what's up? She has not texted me.
Oh, right.
Which has me worried, because I'm like, I literally spoke to her this morning, so am I in trouble? I'm probably in trouble. Oh god, that's awful.
I don't even. Part of me would love to ask for my medical documents, and the other half's like, no.
It's all right. I got some medical information yesterday from a doctor's, yesterday, from a doctor's thing, which I had to take to the A&E, and it threw me through a loop.
Oh.
Apparently, I have emotional unstable disorder, whatever it's called. And I was like, I didn't told me.
It'd be nice
she was sat there like reading through it, and she went, oh, apparently I'm emotionally unstable. And I was like, I could have told you that.
I was like, wow. And that's been a thing since 2013. I really wish people like told me this shit. I never knew. And it's part of BPD.
I've been
but no one told me I had that
since
either.
I moved in with you. I've been saying how emotionally
well,
unstable you are.
Congratulations. I also knew that. I didn't know it was a medical disease.
Like, I didn't realize it was in the file. Yeah.
It threw me through a loop though, because I was like, whoa, this is news.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bluebird. I wouldn't really recommend it, to be honest with you. It's
No.
unless you really love sci-fi and you really love space opera, which I thought I did.
I think Bluebird is the sort of thing I would recommend to someone if it was a case of they've told me they like sci-fi, they told me they like space opera, and all the ones that I've already recommended to them, they've already read. So if I've recommended them Firefly, Chilling Effect, Star Wars, they've read them all, then I'd recommend Bluebird as like a last resort, you know? Yeah. It was really disappointing. And I also do think it feels like it was the beginning of the end of how bad my book club response was. Because I tried reading that one, couldn't get into it. And then the next one, I hate read with the fury of 1,000 suns. So after that, I would pick a book and then I would immediately second guess that I'd made an awful choice because I really hadn't liked these other books. So if you've got something else to say about Bluebird, please do. Otherwise, I'm moving on to the next one and I'm ranting for 20 minutes.
I'm just going to say, I don't want to agree with you, but unfortunately, out of the pool of books next to me, one I was lukewarm on, and one that I did actually like. So there was two out of this picks that I really liked. The rest of them, we'll get there, but I'm really excited to hear this rant that I probably have already heard, but I'm excited to rehash it because I'm pretty sure
will have heard it because you live with me.
Why is that such a nice cover, though?
It's not fucking nice, Emma. It's not as nice as the screen.
Don't let it fool you. I was fooled, not just with the fact that this is meant to be a dark Cinderella retelling, not by the fact that Katie Lowe...
I could have stopped you there. Dark Cinderella makes me think of bad Cinderella, and it's an immediate no for me.
See, yeah, but it's also a Dr. Faustus retelling as well.
That was it, right? So it's meant to be Cinderella meets Dr. Faustus. Katie Lowe, fucking love Katie Lowe, has endorsed it on the front cover.
Oh, she's done you dirty.
And I was so ready to adore this book. Can I just say, the first big mistake was making chapter 1 66 pages.
It was unnecessary. I agree.
I am currently struggling to read 3-page chapters on physical books, so no.
Okay, so here's the premise of this book. Go on.
I put every single read for the book club in here. You know how much I hated that book? Didn't make this book.
It's not going in my book club book forever.
It does not exist.
Does not exist. Okay, here's the premise of this book. Ella is a servant. She is the daughter of a servant. She has always been a servant, but there were 5 years that she doesn't really remember where the lady of the house took her under her wing and, excuse me, burping, taught her to be a lady, right? So in her mind, she is neither a servant nor a lady. She lives in this weird little Victorian bubble in the middle, right? Now the servants treat her like a servant because they've always known her as a servant. The people that live in the house treat her like a servant because she's always been a servant. Ella treats herself like a lady. And one of the first things she does that, like, in my own brain, I was immediately like, right, historical fiction, we need to discuss something, which is where we put these modern ideals or we put this sanitized version of what we think history is into historical fiction. So Ella, being a servant, goes to town and is surprised, nay, scared of how many people there are in Victorian London. It's a shock to her when she goes to the market and people are like rabble-rousing, they're shouting, they're trying to get their stuff, there's mud all over the floor, like there's horse and carriages going, like it's hustle and bustle. She's terrified of this shit. And I'm like, you grew up there. You've lived there your whole life.
With Rapunzel, who lived in a tower on her own, because that would track. This doesn't.
Cinderella loved being around people. Like that ball, she was fucking living.
And like that was literally like the whole point, right, of Cinderella, was that she just wanted to be able to like hang out with people, not have to be a servant, etc. So at the very, very start, we find out that this woman that's looked after her has passed away 2-3 years ago. And she's essentially been turned back into a servant, which she's not best pleased about. The guy who owns the house is a rapist. There's no polite way of saying it. He sexually assaults his staff, gets them pregnant, and then the housekeeper kicks them out. And it happens time and time again, which is why there are now only like 3 or 4 servants working for him, because people don't want to work there if they can help it. She can't get work anywhere else, apparently.
Because she doesn't think she's a servant. She doesn't think she should be getting a job. She thinks she's
It's worse. It's worse than that. Because a certain love interest comes back from being away from school. And as soon as he arrives, I'm like, that's why she stayed. There he is.
It's so obvious. So Prince Charming, okay, comes back. He's engaged though. He's got a girlfriend. It's all very sad. Now, she has learnt to read. This woman has taught her to read, and she's the only person in the whole house that uses their massive library, because of course she fucking is. And she discovers this little black book that has a demonic symbol on the front cover. And at no point does she think, you know what's a good idea? Leaving that the fuck alone. Step 1, she picks it up, it's covered in blood, and rather than going, ooh, putting that back, she goes, let me just have a little butcher's. Like, starts reading it like an absolute psychopath.
To be fair, same though.
I mean, yeah.
Like, if I went into a big house library, right, like this massive house's library, and there was a fucking book that had blood all over it, I'd be like, well, what happened here then? Like, I would be that bitch. Like, I know it would be a bad decision, but I'd also be fully aware that I would have to take on the consequences of my actions at this point.
Yeah. So in chapter 1, she decides that she's going to try this thing. Basically, this woman has said, this like demon woman appears who looks weirdly like her mother, but also weirdly like the lady of the house. She's like a weird like amalgamation of the two. You know, like when you have a dream and you see someone in your dream, but they haven't necessarily got the right face, but mentally you're like, oh, it's that person. She very much has this reaction to this woman. And this woman says, you can have 7 wishes, but if you use all 7 wishes, I will take your soul. And she's just like, okay, bet, I don't think that's real. And decides that she's going to wish for these slippers that are the color of moonbeams, right? Because she's like, it's a very specific thing. And to be fair to her, it's the only decision she makes in the entire book that makes sense to me, because it's so specific that in my mind, I'm like, sure, you've got wishes to burn at the moment. Try it out, see what happens. Now, she is being bullied by one of the other girls working at this place. And this girl has like stolen her money. She's like ruined her clothes. And like this girl like hasn't had anything new in like 100 years. So she's got like an 18-year-old's body in like a 14-year-old's dress. So she's like already so very put upon.
She's called Lizzie, the girl that's bullying her, just as an aside.
That, do you know what? I think that's really interesting, because there's another Lizzie we need to talk about later, isn't there? So
it's actually the Lizzie book club, not the Lunar book club.
Yeah, basically the Lizzie hate club. So anyway, she goes to bed after having the worst day of her fucking life because her money's been stolen, her stuff's been ruined. And she wishes for these slippers because she just wants something. And when she wakes up the next day, not only does she have the slippers, Lizzie's dead. Lizzie has been clocked on the head, dead. And
more fucked up than that, Hannah. She finds Lizzie dead in a water trough.
Yeah, she does.
Fully within a water trough. A great start to a morning, like much better than when you went to sleep last night, love. Like, congrats.
And in her mind, she's like, oh, it must be Lizzie's boyfriend, because he was like really rude to her. And like he'd like flirted with Ella one time, and Lizzie decided to make that her entire personality, to just be mad at her about that. And Ella was like, I can't help it that every man finds me so sexy. I'm a literal child. Like, it's so fucking weird. Anyway, she assumes that it must be the boyfriend that killed Lizzie. So when the police rock up, she kind of says, I think it's the boyfriend. You need to find the boyfriend. He was really weird. I don't want to like get anyone in trouble, but I think that's who you need to look for. And they like run away and go and deal with that. When Charming rocks up with his new fiance, she works for the girlfriend for a while, but the girlfriend sees her as a threat because I don't know if you know this. Every boy finds her sexy because she's a literal child, and again starts bullying her. And rather than say, hey, my guy, we were friends as children, can I tell you in confidence that this is how I'm being treated? Please don't make a big deal about it because I am not secure in this position. But if you could do something to help me, I'd really appreciate it. What she does is she makes another wish. And it's a very casual wish of just like, oh, I wish she wasn't part of his life anymore or something. And there isn't just one death this time. Excuse me. Instead, there is a carriage accident that kills like 12 people, including a small boy.
There is something else that happens. That wish isn't for him not being part of her life anymore, because that comes afterwards. She wishes for something else, because the wish that gets the for the fiance is that she wishes that they weren't engaged anymore. There was something else that happens that makes the carriage accident, and it's so the reason that specifically pisses me off was it's not even important. Like what she wishes for in this instance is so unimportant and irrelevant to the rest of the plot, but it has the biggest consequence ever.
It literally cripples a child. So she thinks this boy's died. He hasn't. He's been crippled. But he's it's still really traumatic for her. And she vows she's never going to wish again.
Oh, of course not.
Less than a day later, it's literally like that. Every time she makes these promises to herself, each chapter, something more awful happens to her. And she makes this promise to herself that she's not going to make the final wish. She's going to wish for this thing and she'll never do it again. And then someone else dies. And then she promises she won't wish for anything else. And then she does, and someone else dies. And she starts like poisoning her boss so that he just passes out and doesn't rape her. She then gets into a sexual relationship with Prince Charming and is surprised when she falls pregnant.
Oh,
yeah, but the thing is, this character gets surprised by everything. Like the fact that people keep on dying, she's like, oh, it's my fault. Like, oh my god, consequences for my actions. Like she doesn't understand that consequences exist. So like when she falls pregnant, I'd be shocked if she wasn't surprised, because like she just doesn't use her brain ever. That was the thing that pissed me off in this. I was like, there are things happen when you do things, my girl. Like
it would be like if someone was like, okay, I need you to look both left and right before you cross the road, and that person went car, and then like literally like that. Every choice she could have made rationally. She could have thought it through, and instead she fucked it. So this continues, and I'm not gonna lie, by this point I'm angry reading this book, and I'm just like, I just need to finish it because I'm like, it's for the book club. I've chosen it for the book club, and I'm like putting things in the Discord that is basically like, I hate this, and I'm so mad because it's the gothic one, it's the gothic prompt, and I was so hyped for it. I was so angry. I was angry
on the sofa opposite me, and I was just like waiting for like when she'd break, because I was sitting there just casually reading a different book that I was really enjoying, but I kept seeing out the corner of my eye just Hannah get more and more like irate, like turning the pages more and more angry, and I was like, please, when is this gonna happen? And then she'd go, I hate this book. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stop reading. What's happened now?
So she manages to convince the father of Prince Charming, the guy that's the rapist, to give her a house, and he gives her a very small house because she's pregnant with this child. And she also gets the younger sister of Lizzie as her servant. So they are just there to keep an eye on her. And she doesn't like that she then has to befriend this old lady to get kind of any charity out of this old lady. And when she messes up and embarrasses herself in front of this old lady, she kind of wishes that she could inherit from the old lady quicker, that she could kind of guarantee. Now, at this point, outside of a wish, she's already ruined this other woman's life, because this other woman was like living as the companion for this rich woman. And Ella's like, well, I need to get in there as a companion. This bitch needs to go. Ruins her career, ruins her life, gets rid of her, finds a way to basically imply that she's been stealing from her boss or something like that, moves in as the companion, and then fucks it up because she doesn't know what she's doing. She's not a lady's maid. She is just a like garden variety house servant, right? She doesn't know what she's doing. Now, the thing that also got me, and this really pissed me off the whole way through, is every time she tries to rationalize one of her choices, it's that she wants to help her friend Neve, who is this young girl living in the house. She wants to protect her, who is in a sapphic relationship with another one of the servants, and pretty much never does anything to help this girl. She tells her that she's going to help her write job references. The job references get found by the boss. Tells her that she's going to send her money where she can, doesn't send the money. And when this girl kind of cuts ties with her because she's just like I can't keep supporting you.
This girl is like she's working there and she's sending all her money back to Ireland, where her little brother is like deathly ill and sick, and the money is being used for medicine. And like the reason that she's continuing to put herself in these positions where she is in danger of being cast out on the street and, you know, sexual assault, all that sort of stuff. She's like, no, I'm doing it for my family. Like, I can't just leave. Like, there are bigger stakes. And Ella is always like, but you could just leave though. What? No.
Yeah.
No, she can't leave.
Well, if you didn't leave, why is she gonna leave? Like, it was a whole thing. And then it ends with she goes to the ball with Prince Charming, and they're engaged. She's been accepted, but she has used her final wish. She didn't mean to. She like kind of like I think she like flippantly wishes that he would forget a particular thing, or she wishes to evade the police officer who has started putting pieces together because she was seen outside the old lady's house before the old lady was beaten to death. And she was seen visiting places where other people died. And she, like, the only person who could have killed Lizzie right at the start, who had motive and keeps being around all these people that keep dying, is Ella. And it's heavily implied the whole way through that as a child, she was vile. She was violent. She was nasty, etc. And that it was only the lady of the house who was able to calm her down. And that it wasn't that she was trained to be a lady, that she was trained to be a decent human being, to not like there's one of the housekeepers has got like a scar across her neck, and she's like, you gave me this, and Ella's like, no, I didn't, I don't remember. And like it then becomes this thing where, did Ella kill these people? We'll never know, because it ends by her being chased by this woman, and she goes, right, I know that if I can get onto holy ground, I'm safe. Oh, what happened with the kid? Turns out she wasn't pregnant. Turns out that wasn't true. She runs full pelt into the church grounds that not 3 pages before she walked past and went, that's weird. They've dug up the church grounds. They've excavated loads of because basically they were like moving them. They were expanding the city, right? So they had moved loads of stuff, which meant that the sanctified ground wasn't sanctified anymore. So she runs full pelt. When she gets there, Demon Lady's there waiting for her, and she jumps into a hole.
Yeah, and the thing is, the police are also chasing her at this point, right? And the thing that pisses me off about this is that, okay, I can swallow that she killed these people. I can swallow that it was her own psyche. I can completely get behind that as like being the thing. But it ends also with the fact that the only things left of her were these fucking blue slippers.
That's the Cinderella reference, in case you didn't see it coming. That was it. That was it.
But it implies the Demon Lady was there all along. And I'm like, but you've literally just spent the entire fucking 400 pages of this book selling me on this, that this fucking lady is in Ella's brain and it's Ella doing all these horrible, horrific things. But no, the fucking blue slippers are here. So what was this book? What was the point? What happened? Is it supposed to be this really prolific thing about mental health not being understood in the Victorian era, and like the fact that no one took her seriously because she was a servant, and all these horrible things happened because servants were treated like absolute shit in the Victorian era? Or was it a fucking Dr. Faustus, like, demon ladies? What?
But also, like, Prince Charming's not all that charming. Like, he literally is like, hey, I can't marry you. I need to marry someone of status. But if you're still cool to like have sex and stuff. And she's like, yeah, of course. So then like when he finds out that she's pregnant, he's just kind of like, oh, like he's not like, oh yay, I'm gonna be a dad. Like it's really awkward because like reading it, I remember sitting there being like, I'm uncomfortable. Like it was so it was so uncomfy.
But also, the thing about him, he's fucking ridiculous, right? The reason he breaks up with his fiance is because he sees her being unkind to a servant, and he is shocked. Excuse me, you are in high society. You have probably treated servants exactly the same way, my guy. Don't pretend like this is something out of the fucking blue and completely abnormal for rich people who are in high society to not treat the common people like complete dirt.
It's like he finally acknowledges her personality because he's like, oh, you're really selfish and you're really like invested in money and you treat servants really poorly. And she's like, you've met me before. Like it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. And it made me so angry because I was like, I'm really starting to go off Victorian Gothic, right? There is something about the real like stiff bodice, don't know what to believe, everything's insidious, but like overly dramatic that I'm like, I don't have time for you. Like commit to the psychological drama or commit to the ghosts. Don't try and have your cake and eat it because it just doesn't work. And the book was so boring because it's only like 11 chapters, but each one is like 80 pages long. And I'm just like, I just don't care. Except I did care. I cared so much I got very angry about it. So
but I think the reason you cared and the reason it got under your bonnet, like bees under your bonnet with it, is because it was the Gothic pick. And you are well known for Gothic books. Like you've made your whole channel and it's part of your personality. I trust your like your recommendations to me because I've had more than just this book, right? But someone who is probably a follower of yours might have picked this up and it's so bad. Right?
I was so disappointed.
That's the problem. And I know that is something that will have affected it because it's like, shit, this is one of like the thing I'm known for and I've chosen this book.
Yeah, devastated. But it's fine because we get an even worse Gothic one to come, so that's fun. Rat baby.
Oh, we really do.
We were being chaotic and
standard.
It's always you or your brother, so one of you can
white face. You have a white face.
He's a roan, so
okay.
Little face.
Who are you? Are you Sprout or are you your Sprout? I was like, which one are you?
Right, next on the list is Blood Trials. Now, I haven't finished this one, but I have been told the ending by Lizzie, so...
No. Oh, yes, I did. I did tell you the ending. Only because you told me to. You did tell me to.
This was the one where it was very, very funny because I asked a very specific question about spoilers and Lizzie was like, I don't want to tell you it's a spoiler. And I was like, it's fine. I've asked you like a specific question. And then Lizzie dropped a massive spoiler about something that was going to happen less than 2 pages after where I was.
Oh.
And watching the fear and upset roll across her face, totally worth it. So worth it.
Genuinely... I thought Hannah was slightly further into the book than she was. I felt genuinely awful because I was like, I don't want to tell Hannah the ending because it's a spoiler. Okay, Hannah specifically asked me, told me it's okay. So then I went on this long rant about why something pissed me off at the end. And then Hannah went, I haven't got there yet. And I was like,
fuck. So... The Blood Trials was picked for BIPOC fantasy. It reads like a sci-fi, but I'm not mad about it because it's one of those ones where it's like a hybrid between the two. There's modern tech, but there's like old school fantasy tropes. You've got interesting characters. You've got the whole like battle royale vibe. And essentially in this, the main character, Akana, has been drinking herself into a stupor for the last 3 months since her grandfather passed away. Her grandfather was a highly notable general. And she was kind of following in his footsteps. But now that he's dead, she kind of feels a bit lost. But she is given new purpose when a family friend informs her that her grandfather didn't just die, he was murdered. And they think they know who did it, but they need her to go into something she was already going to do, but kind of flunked out of, so that she can get some information. So she signs back up to this military training thing. I think they're called like Praetorians. Is that what they call them?
Yeah.
And she starts training to be that. Now she knows she's going to be facing sexism. She knows she's going to be facing racism. And she's also facing an additional persecution because she has a type of blood magic that is illegal in the world that she lives in. I adore her. Like, with my whole heart, I adore her. Because even though this book is very tropey and it does hit all the classic beats of a high fantasy, didn't mind it. Didn't mind that she has like really cute besties. She's got like her ride or dies. Yeah. It's. Are you trying to hide a poker face, or are you trying to hide?
I can't poker face, but something you just said pains me to my core.
Yeah. That was the thing that Lizzie spoiled for me.
No, it wasn't. There's something else, and I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Well, you did say something about the friends, so.
I know, but it's not that. It's something else. But I also agree. Akana is the type of heroine like I want to see in fantasy more of, because she is extremely strong-willed and she doesn't let anything kind of trip her up. She also gets like fixated on like really specific details that as a reader it gets frustrating because it's like, stop thinking about that thing. You're missing everything else because you are so focused on this one thing. But that makes her more realistic as like a human being.
Yeah.
And like that's something else. She is very human. Her reactions to things are super realistic. And yet she's dealing with these high fantasy like magic systems, these absolutely insane like landscapes that she's just kind of thrown into. But she deals with them in such a human way. And when she gets put into these situations time and time again, the way she reacts, I'm like, it's just so well done and it's so well written. And like you feel like, I think what the author does is you feel everything the same way the character reacts to things. It's just a lot of
she's very much reacts first, thinks later type girly, which I really appreciate because it definitely keeps the pace of the thing moving very quickly. There are some moments of reflection, and what I really like about it is every now and then she'll get into her own head and she'll be like overthinking something, and one of the characters will be like, "You're doing the thing again," and it's almost like those moments when she's talking to the audience directly is almost like a Fleabag moment where she's not really like in the room as such. So I thought that was really interesting. I really like the mixture of like urban and wilderness settings. There's like a really nice like mix of that. There's lots of BIPOC rep. And there's even a scene where she's talking to this guy about which island he's from and how she's able to like narrow down. Okay. She's able to like,
because you can both hear it.
Yeah, because it'll be right here. So Lizzie is directly above me. Yeah, I don't know why this guy does it. He knocks for our neighbor, but he just beeps outside. He doesn't actually knock for them. It's really weird. But yeah, so there's this really great rep where she's talking to him and like able to narrow down which island he's from because of the attributes. To answer this question, no, there is no animal companion, unfortunately.
Which is a really good thing, because I can tell you right now, Tamar, if there was an animal companion, it would not have survived. And there would have been a problem with that.
No.
Like, I would have had a real issue, so I'm really glad there wasn't an animal companion, because I don't need to see another animal die in a high fantasy book. And the situations and everything that it kind of goes through, that animal would be long fucking gone by now.
The animal book would not make it to the end, for sure. But yeah, I haven't finished this yet. So I guess it means I can't really give spoilers. But I really like the fact that there are kind of like in any high fantasy where there are trials, there is that real moment of, is she going to make it? Is she going to make the right choice? Are these things piling up on top of her? it is an adult, so it does have scenes of a sexual nature. And what kills me about that is there's not a lot of like sexual tension, but there's like tension between her and one of these characters. And I literally was like talking to Lizzie about it, and I was like, it's so funny to me because I know that any Davenport wants me to ship these two characters because character A has just been wounded and now character B is healing their wounds, right? And it's like a classic trope. Saw it coming a mile away. I was like, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to create tension here. Like, I'm not stupid. They literally have sex 3 pages later, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because like I don't see that very often. Probably because I read more YA than anything else, where it's like we're gonna hint at tension, but we're never gonna give you the payoff. But it's not like full-blown erotica or anything like that. It's very kind of, oh, we just did that. We probably shouldn't have. That is going to have consequences.
I will
say, a good time though.
I will say that is one of the reasons, not sort of, but I gave it 4 stars because their relationship never made sense to me, and it doesn't. It still doesn't make sense to me by the end of the book because I was expecting a certain thing to be true, which I've already spoken to Hannah about, and I was like, that would make sense for me because this is all this kind of like magnetism that kind of comes out of nowhere. To be honest with you, like it feels like there was some sort of like love-hate relationship thing kind of going on already. Like I'm not denying that, but there is very much a sense, especially for her, where she's like, "Why did I just do that? Like, where did this come from?" kind of thing. So when that thing didn't happen, I was like, I need this to make sense. And I really hope in book 2 there's going to be like a bombshell fucking drop. Like, I really hope.
See, for me, it does make sense because for me, I'm like, oh, it's cabin fever. Like, she literally, like, when he rocks up, she's like, okay, he's the most attractive man I've ever seen in my life. What a dick. Like, she's already, like, trying to put up barriers that clearly don't really need to be there. Like, she's putting up on a front. She is obsessed with him because she thinks he's connected to her grandfather's murder. So she wants to be all up in his business. He is not as easy to read as everyone else she knows. He doesn't do the things she expects him to do. He kind of challenges her at every given opportunity. And he's the same, in the same way that like there's like a really fun conversation between him and his friends where they're roasting him. And it's very similar to like that scene in Akatar where Rhysand returns to his pals and they all roast him because they all know like the real him that's not a real monster. And she's like, wait, you're a human being? And it's like, yeah, obviously people aren't one-dimensional. So for me, I was like, oh, I can absolutely see why. Because like the aggression, I was like, I can see it. I do think it was very surface level. There's no like deep emotional attachment there. It was very much a kind of physical thing. And I do think there's like an element of like convenience.
Sorry, it's just what Tamar said in the comments.
I mean, you raise an excellent point, but you know what I'm trying to say. Because like there's a bit where I'm trying to remember what I was gonna say. There's a bit where she like says something to him and he doesn't have the reaction she's expecting him to have. That just I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely how I expected him to react to that situation. Like, so he like takes a knife that means like a lot to her because of course she has a knife that's sentimental. She's a warrior girl, of course she does. And he like gives her like a legitimate reason as to why he took it. And she's like, well, that's not good enough. And it's like, it's the truth though. And like, that's it. End of conversation. And I'm like, that's so funny to me.
Okay, but there's some other things that I don't know if it's been revealed to you yet, so I don't want to tell you them. But there are some other things that happen, which is the reason why I'm like, I wish it had gone where I wanted it to go. I'm like, in a way, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of glad it didn't. But on the other hand, I'm like, you are pushing like this sort of narrative, like, and it isn't a bad thing. Like, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars in the end. Like, I really, really like this book. But there are just a few things. And I guess it's because it is the first of a duology. I think a lot of the reasoning why this book fell not flat, but like it missed the mark a few times is because it is setting up for book 2. The ending is by far my favorite part of the book. This is like, it's an explosive ending. And like, what a setup for book 2. Like, it's incredible.
You sound like a sports commentator. And what a setup for part 2. Like, I will be genuinely really surprised if this doesn't get 5 stars. For me. I think I'm going to give this 5 stars.
Who's your favourite character so far?
Fucking all of them. Like, all of them. Like, Celine is amazing. Enzo is great. Akenna, wonderful. Reed is just fucking funny. Like, they're all wonderful.
Well,
to be
my
fair, having
favourite-
said that, what is the name of the begins with D? Reed.
Yeah, she's my favourite. Danica is my favourite.
Danica, that's it. Of course,
She
she's called
is
fucking Danica.
so-
She is
so
amazing.
So basically, once they end the trials, basically they have to go through this really ridiculous thing that's absolutely traumatizing, like to the point of, oh my god. At the end of this, Danica is like, ha, yeah, you get a free shot. I also punched my torturer too. Like, she's so like, I would not blame you. Like, and then she's like calling her Kenna, and like Kenna is what Kenna is called like by her friends. And it's just so funny.
She's
Danica,
a real kind of like Alice meets Morgan kind of like vibe. Like, she is that eternal bestie. And I just adore her. I love her so much.
Who is your least favorite character so far?
Oh, for sure, Chase.
Yeah,
the massive racist who's also a sadist and tries to kill everyone. Him.
I don't want to spoil anything because I've written a really big spoiler right there. But also my least favorite character.
You've written Chance. Is his name Chance or Chase?
His name is Chance.
I've been calling him Chase this entire time.
Um,
Cayman grew on me. I didn't think I was going to like him, to be fair. Oh yeah, it's Chance. You're right. It's right there.
He will go downhill again. I'm just going to give you a proper heads up.
Yeah, I figured he would. I figured he'd be awful. Like, he could have a little redemption arc for like 5 minutes. That's fine. But no, Chance can absolutely get in the fucking sea. Absolute worst human being.
And you will continue to think that.
I don't doubt that for a second.
He is honestly such a good, well-crafted villain, right? Because he's supposed to be on the right side, okay? And he is just insufferable. And it's all about racism and misogyny. And he doesn't see past that, even when she's proven herself to be this amazing warrior, this exactly the same rank as him. He still can't see past his own nose. And it's like,
men are like that, unfortunately.
But I will say, if you do like this, or the books, I would say it's a cross between Iron Widow for the female warrior, and some of the sci-fi elements, and also the Gilded ones. Those are the 2 books I can say confidently that if you like those, you will probably like this.
See, I would compare it probably to what is it? It's like the Song of Race and Ruin, I think it is.
I haven't read that.
Loved that. We'll compare it to that for sure. In the fact that, again, it's trials, it's BIPOC rep, own voices, set in a really interesting place, very human based, very kind of like, I'm on the wrong side of this fight, but I have to do everything I can to survive type vibe. Really like that. But she really is a very tropey protagonist. That it's like, I'm angry. She kind of reminds me of Jude from Cruel Prince. Not gonna lie.
Like, that's kind of why I liked her, because there were all the tropes, all of them. You can't like get away from that, I don't think.
No.
Because high fantasy now, you get some high fantasies that are the exact same to every other high fantasy. YA.
And we'll get to one. We'll get to one later today.
We will for sure. But this one, I don't know what it was. The way Akenna is crafted as a character, there are so many other things about her that when she does a tropey thing, I'm like, okay, but you've reacted like a human would, like a person would do. So I kind of look past the tropes. And the thing is, trials, I love trials in high fantasy. It's one of my favorite plot points. I think they're really, really, really fun. And this was just such a fun way of doing it. It's traumatizing as hell. Like, there is so many things that genuinely, Tamar, if you want to put it on your TBR, please look up content warnings beforehand, because I'm telling you, there is so many things in this book that
it's a long list
for. But it is great. I loved it. It was exactly what I was looking for in a high fantasy. And after some of the shit that I've read, I'm sorry, there was a lot of shit that was read. Specifically, the book before I picked this one up, I honestly considered throwing it out of a window. This was a breath of fresh air, and I kind of forgave it for its tropes, to be honest.
Cool. Right. Have you got anything else you want to say? Because I'm just like, I just adore this. I think this is great. This is my favorite, I think, of all the ones that I've read for Lunar Book Club.
Was it hard to have a favorite?
No. Like, I feel like Cold Boys would have been my favorite were it not. Like, there are books and like there's ones that I've started that I'll get to that I'm like, I have every intention of finishing this. I don't think I will rate them as highly as this, but that's because this is my jam.
I think for me, it's between Cold Boys Wood and Blood Trials as my favorite, and I like them for very different reasons. And they both got 4 stars, so I think they're on the same level. But I can't compare them because they are so different. And I would reread both. Like that's the truth of it. And like if I think about the ones that I have on my list, like there are some sequels that I would get to, and we're about to go on to one of them. I think that I do want to read the sequel for, but I would reread Blood Trials like over and over again.
Well, there is one that we have to talk about before that. Well, actually, there's a couple we have to talk about before that because the one you're thinking of is actually August, I think.
Then maybe don't pick it up, Tamar. Just saying, if you don't like what you just said about your content warnings, don't pick up Blood Trials. I would say, just for the safe side.
So, Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly was picked because the prompt was an LGBT romance, and I got really excited because one of the main characters in this is non-binary, and I thought that would be really fun. And I am not gonna lie, I've been trying to read this today. Do you know how many pages I got in before I fell asleep?
24.
8.
Oh.
I fell asleep on page 8.
Okay, I don't know where I got to, but I DNF'd it. No, I need to give a preface here, right? So, it wasn't for the story. It wasn't for the book or anything. I read it. There's a character called Lizzie. And she is a massive transphobe.
Oh.
And I could not get past it because it really was uncomfortable, especially when I am still learning about, gender identity, and I'm still, making decisions around all of that already. It was really uncomfy feeling like having my name and having the like absolute disgusting transphobic stuff that came out of her mouth. I was like, I don't want to read this. I don't like this. Like that is not me. But because they've got my name, I'm like, oh, I don't like it at all.
Well, I was hoping to read it so that I could so that we could discuss it, so that we could discuss where the transphobia is embedded, why it might be there, because I was talking to someone the other day about how they really like Juno Dawson's Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and what they really like about it is transphobia is confronted in this character who is awful throughout. And then when they come out as a transphobe, everyone's like, oh, yeah, well, we hated you anyway. Thanks for giving us like a legitimate reason kind of thing. But it's written by a trans author. So it's very much a own voices. Here's me confronting something that has probably been said or done to them, or certainly has the experience of knowing that that is violence that can be used against them. Now, I'm not making any assumptions with regards to Anita Kelly. I don't know. But I wanted to be able to read this book so that with Lizzie having DNF'd it, I could say, right, I can absolutely see where this transphobia is coming from. It's either redeemed or it like dealt with in some way. Because like there's books that I've read where I'm like, oh, these characters are all incredibly fatphobic or they're incredibly homophobic. And because it's by an own voices author, you can see where that story is going. I couldn't even get through chapter 1. I just didn't care. And with the kind of clumsy writing that I saw in those opening 8 pages, I have very much made a decision regarding the writing anyway. Like, if this weren't for the fact that this was a book club pick, I would have read those first 2 pages and then just put it down anyway. Because I love a romance. Lizzie doesn't like romance. So I was like, is there an element of it's a genre you don't vibe with that's making it worse? Is it the fact that it's a character's name that is your name that makes it difficult? Because I'm not going to lie, Murder of Graham Catton, the main character being called Hannah and being an awful person, definitely jarring, right? So like there are elements of that. I can't even tell you because this book's beginning was so boring and so trying to cram so many romantic tropes onto the page that I just didn't give a shit. And I actually kind of want to skip ahead a little bit to talk about Partners in Crime because I tried both of these this afternoon because I haven't been able to read these like throughout the year. I haven't prioritized them. And they were also the two that were the least popular in the book club, which was really interesting considering like you guys were given the option of prompts and romances were picked for both of these. I think because one was LGBT and one was BIPOC, and I think it was more that the rep was interesting to people than the genre itself. But this one, I am already 24 pages in. It took me less time to get to those 24 pages than it did, but I also wasn't falling asleep. Partners in Crime already establishes that the main character has high standards, that she is seen to be quite aloof, that she is seen to be quite cold, and that she is getting increasingly frustrated with being alone. That she sees her friends that are in long-term relationships and she wants that for herself, but she is not emotionally prepared to bring down any barriers. And then you see the other perspective, which is the love interest, where he is someone who does a lot for other people. He doesn't really have barriers in the same way. He's very empathetic and compassionate, but she's already dismissed him. That's like in the synopsis, is essentially she goes to this matchmaker to get set up. The matchmaker sets her up with like 100 different people. She rejects all of them. This guy is one of them. Now, unfortunately, he is dealing with the estate that's been left to her by a family she doesn't speak to. She has no attachment to this family. She's changed her name because they're into some kind of dirty dealings. She's about to get chased by jewelry thieves through Las Vegas with this guy, and they're going to be fighting for their lives. I am so much more engaged with the characters in this because the author doesn't feel the need to go, here's all of my emotional baggage on the first page. Mm-hmm. It's shown in her behavior. It's shown in her choices. It's shown in what she thinks versus what she says out loud. Whereas this was a hot fucking mess of just like, let me just trauma dump on like page one of like what a traumatic day I've had. Cause like, I'm like totally divorced, but also I just literally walked into a human being and I'm about to be on a TV show. And it's like, there's so much just piled on. Whereas like the opening chapter of this, it's just setting up who she is as a main character because you've got 300 pages. You've got time. Like it's not going to be slow burn just because you take some time to establish who these characters are. And I just felt like for this, it was so very clear to me, this was a debut author. Like it was just a mess. You are trying to do too much. And it doesn't help that this is by Headline Eternal, which is not a publisher I get very often. This is Piatkus. I fucking love Piatkus romance. They're the same people who did Chloe Brown. They do. They work with Avon as well. So anyone that does like the Mia Souza romances, things like that, like it's all much of a muchness. So it's a writing style and publisher that I can trust more than this one. So I will be continuing this one. I will be unhauling this one because even without the transphobia, I just don't care.
I will say I have seen some reviews for Love and Other Disasters because I think there's been a couple of other YouTuber book club picks. Quite a few people DNF'd it. A lot of people enjoyed it. So I think if it's something you're interested in, go look up some more reviews. Go check out Own Voice reviews because I can't really speak for the rep, but I know that I just was like, I was uncomfortable about how in your face the transphobia was because I wasn't prepared for it. And because it was my name, it was worse. And I don't like romance. I don't read it very often. I like a romance subplot, but there has to be something other than just romance. Like it can't just be about the romance. And I don't know, I think I can't even remember how far I got, but it doesn't get better with the whole so much going on. That continues for I think at least the first 4 or 5 chapters.
Yeah,
and I just didn't get on with it. And that was kind of the breaking point. I think it was like after the 3rd or 4th time this character had piped up, I was like, I can't do this. Like this is making me feel genuinely like sick. Like I can't sit here and read that.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. Where do you stand on romance, Emma?
I don't know. I picked up some festive romances over Christmas.
Okay.
Didn't hate them, which is shocking. I think I'm having like a quarter life crisis where I'm starting to be like, I'm 26 and alone. And so my brain's like, we should read romance. And I'm just like, why? I'm having this internal conflict with myself because I prided myself of being so anti-romance. And now I'm like, well, maybe. And I had Ali look at my NetGalley spreadsheet and I was like, just pick a book for me because I've got far too many. I need to start going through them. And she was like, I feel like half of these are not you. And I was like, well, I don't know what I am either. So she's picked Ophelia After All, which I believe is kind of romancy YA. Don't mind me twirling a fucking strawberry lace. I'm just edible fidget. But yeah, so I'm not intrigued by the transphobia, but Partners in Crime is. I'm kind of sat here like, oh. So.
I think that's the thing is like I find with Piatkus they're really good with good rep. So obviously the Get a Life Chloe Brown and like the entire Brown sister series, what I really like about that is yes, it's a romance, but it's a romance with plus size rep. And the first one, there's chronic pain as a disability rep. The second one, she has like mental health, like anxiety. I think bipolar disorder is acknowledged, things like that. He is dealing with anxiety and depression. So there's like mental health rep in that. And then in the third one, the younger sister is neurodivergent. So the main conflict isn't ableism. Like it's not that they're dealing with this. It's more that much like the romance in their life, it's just something else they're kind of having to navigate. And I really like that. And don't get me wrong, I love a gimmick. I love a gimmick in a romance. So obviously, Taylor talks about Beach Read, for example. I've not read that, but I do enjoy like a summer romance, certainly more than a Christmas romance. I can't really get into Christmas romances, but my favorite romances are always the ones where the main character is dealing with stuff beyond just not being able to find the right person. Like they're either self-sabotaging or there's like conflict in the way they met. Like the Unhoneymooners is a great one where she's got this new job, she wants to go on this holiday, she has to go with a guy that she hates. She then bumps into her new boss on this holiday and has to continue pretending in front of her boss that she's married because she's gone on this honeymoon. So there's like all these things that it's like you didn't need to make this complicated, but you've made it complicated and now it's really funny. But the main conflict between the love interests has nothing to do with any of that and everything to do with her own insecurities, her own imposter syndrome, where she puts on other people that they will be disappointed in her, that her sister is the lucky sister. Her sister gets everything she wants. And she, thus, in turn, is the unlucky sister. She is the one who gets punished. She's the one who gets in trouble and things like that. And obviously that's not true because, as I said earlier, people aren't binaries. So it's one of those things where that's where the conflict comes from. And then it pulls at your heartstrings. Love shit like that. The love hypothesis where she is studying cancer. She is studying to kind of find a way to cure cancer because cancer took her family from her. So that means a lot to her. Yes, there is a romance with her boss, which is like a whole thing. But the way that's dealt with, both of them have a reason to pretend to date and then actually start dating because they respect each other. But for her, that she is like singular minded. She's not interested in being in a relationship with him. That's not where the conflict comes from. It comes from, again, her feelings, her inadequacies as far as
I read a romance recently. Lucy Yee is not a romantic. I listened to the audiobook of that. That's kind of that. I really wish the books that I just asked you if you can get, and I was like, yeah, I've got 75 copies. I need the new cover. I wish they were like new adult or adult, not YA, because I'd be so intrigued to see what you thought of them, because they're very polar. People either love it, and in fairness, Estelle wrote them. She first wrote them when she was like 13, and then she started to rewrite them, and that's when they got published. And you can tell, like, I can tell from her newer books how much more, you know, her writings changed from being like 16, 17 to 25. But I don't know. I feel like you would hate it.
I reckon I might enjoy them. Like I do enjoy a YA romance. Like even like the really tropey ones, like and the French Kiss and To All the Boys I Loved Before.
I don't know, and it's hard because like, I mean, it's so funny. Estelle and I, we would go for dinner and like we would sit and look at the Goodreads reviews. Like she would never like, you know, comment on them, but we would just sit and like, because the thing is, it's one of those, as I say, it's such a polarizing book, and a lot of people just hate the premise because it's step siblings, and we would just sit and howl at the people that are like, but it's incest, and it's like, but they're not actually related. But it's very teenage angsty, like, oh, but we just want to be in love. But it's one of those where it's like, I just can't help but be obsessed with it. And it was the only romance that I ever liked. And to be fair, I think half of it is just because I was so close with Estelle.
That's fair. I also really enjoy a romance graphic novel. Lore Olympus, wonderful. Fence, where they're like definitely into each other, but won't admit it. I adore it. I adore it so much. So Heartstopper, obviously, go to. Yeah. I think this is the thing. And actually, I was talking to someone about this years ago because I was very much, I don't like romance. Like if you look back at like my first YouTube videos, all of them are, I don't like romance, but this one's okay. And can you smell the internalized misogyny? Like, what the fuck have I got against romance? What have I got against people being into each other? Like, it's so bizarre because it's the idea that it's like this really girly thing to be into romance. And it's like, actually, no, like, there's stories of people and it's a coming together of like emotions. And like, usually it's the friendships and like, yeah, I know, Lizzie, but stop turning your fucking nose up at it because it does. It so reeks of internalized misogyny.
But I also don't like contemporaries. I'm like, I don't like real, like things bedded in real life. If something can get me that's got a contemporary story, like then the book has done a fucking fantastic like job, because I don't like having to relive like a life that I have, like I know. I like to be taken to a different world, and like that's why I like romance subplots. I love a romance subplot, and I'm always like, why aren't they banging yet? Like that is usually where I'm like, there is sexual tension, please just bang. So like I know that I like romance. I just like there to be something else going on.
See, when I got back into reading, it was when I got my job at Waterstones. And so my videos like 2014, 15, 16, they're all me being like really into contemporary. I was reading Estelle Mascom. I was reading John Green. Like I was that bitch. And then I like broke up with my ex and was obviously kind of dealing with a lot of being undiagnosed and all this stuff. And then I started discovering myself and I was like, well, maybe I'm asexual and maybe that's what it is. And then I just became very much, well, I hate romance. And then it's been over the last few years when I've been like, well, am I ace or is it just trauma? And I therefore say, no, thanks. So I think that's where that came from. And it's just weird. Like, I don't know what I like. I don't know what books are. I just pick them up.
This is the thing, is I think sometimes we paint ourselves into a corner and it doesn't necessarily, it's not always negative. We're like, oh, I love a story that's got such and such a thing. But sometimes there'll be a book that doesn't hit. It doesn't put you off the genre in total. Like we literally said earlier today, we like a space opera. Bluebird didn't hit. That doesn't mean I'm going to walk away and be like, I hate all space operas.
Yeah.
But we do it with genres that we think we don't like, and then we're surprised when occasionally there's one that does fit the niche. Like, I am not a massive sci-fi fan. It is not the genre that I reach for.
That was me with
sci-fi. Love The Martian, though, didn't I? What a great book. Finished Project Hail Mary last week. Adored it. Like, it's one of those things where, like...
That's why I started to get sci-fi. I was like, I need to try and get into it because I always avoided it. And then now it's like... it's quite funny because I still don't even admit it. Like, I've got all these sci-fi sitting and I'm like really keen for them. I just read and did not like the Infinity Files, but I still really enjoyed the whole being in space thing. And I'm like, oh, what space book am I reading next? I'm like, don't like space, so don't like sci-fi. But I'm already planning to reread Chilling Effect when I get it out the cupboard so I can continue the series. But I don't like sci-fi. No, not at all.
Emma, please explain to the alien sat behind you that you don't like sci-fi. please look that alien in the eyes.
Do you want the bigger laugh? So he's there, right? But behind him, you can just see there's another one.
Just the way he likes amazing.
I mean,
amazing. I knew you had loads of alien things anyway, because like Aliens was your brand for ages, and you had like your little alien. Have you still got your alien toy that's like the little claw thing?
I've got fucking tattoo.
I know you do.
No, I got rid of the claw machine. I gave it to my neighbor because the noise just pissed me off. And
That's
now I'm
fair.
kind of mad because I've still got my TB arcade cards, and I'm like, oh, I could totally do that again. But I'm like, yeah, no.
No, that's fair.
I got this tie basically for free. It was a pay what you want. I had £3.80 on me. I got a little duck ornament that was priced at £2. I got my grana mug, which was pay what you want. This guy was pay what you want, and 4 books were pay what you want. So for
Sweet.
£1.81, a mug, this guy, and 4 books. And
A
these sell for
bargain.
like
A
20 quid
steal.
sometimes.
Theft.
So they were happy with it. I was like, they were closing, and I was like, oh, I can give you like, 5-10 quid or whatever, like on my card. And they were like, no, just give us the cash. Just pay what you want. And I was like,
Cute.
amazing.
I think what's really funny with talking about like sci-fi, until last year I wasn't convinced I liked sci-fi, and then all of my favorite books from like 2021 were like loads were sci-fi, and I was like, what is this? This is not correct. And then like this year, spoilers I guess for my video that's not out yet, but a lot of them are horror, and I'm like, these are genres I never used to even touch. And like now there are so many books of that genre that have made it into my best books. Like what?
I used to hate murder mysteries, like written murder mysteries. I was like, sign me up to a procedural, like Criminal Minds, Midsummer Murders, even the Scandi dramas. Sign me up. But I do not like murder mysteries. Reading them, now my brother's trying to call me. Like
maybe you should pick up.
Maybe I should. I'll text him in a sec. But now, like, yeah, like you said, I was watching my best books of the year last year to see if like my opinions on them were still the same. Bar one, they all have murder in. And like the one that didn't was a romance. So it's like it's just
paint yourself into a corner, why don't you, Hannah?
Right.
Yeah.
I have just went to my spreadsheet, and I'm forgetting I only read 30 books last year. In a shocking turn of events, I gave 5 contemporaries 5 stars, 5 fantasy 5 stars, apparently another different fantasy 5 stars. So I gave 10 fantasies 5 star. No, 50. Why is this pie chart giving me 3 separate fantasy? Did
you spell them differently and put non-capital letter? Because that does that to me, and I'm like, why have you put that? It's the same word.
No, I don't know if it's like a space. I don't know what it's done. But for a second there, I was like, I've given like every different genre 5 stars. But no, it seems like I gave like 15 fantasy 5 stars. That doesn't make sense. I need to look into
What was the last fantasy you gave a 5 stars to?
I mean, being fair, I'm very broad on fantasy because like The Last Firefox, I gave that 4 stars, but I have it down as fantasy just because it's like got that magical element.
I lump all middle grades together, no matter the genre. I'm like, yeah, that's for kids. It's technically a form. It's not even a genre, it's form. But I'm just like, yeah, it's a genre in and of itself.
Where the Lost Ones Go by Akemi Don Bowman, but again, middle grade fantasy, and it's more ghost than fantasy.
And also a favorite author of yours.
I just gave up on categorizing. Like, I was like, I don't know what to call it. It's fantastical, but like actual fantasy where it's like completely other world probably would have been The Infinity Courts by Akemi Don Bowman. That would probably be the last actual fantasy that I've given 5 stars to.
That's fair. Just to bring up the quote here of maybe I just hate straight fae, because I do enjoy fantasy romance graphic novels, mostly queer, but I don't like fantasy romance as a genre. Thoughts?
So
I just hate fae.
So I like fae. I think they're very interesting as like mythological, like the mythological legends. I think they're fascinating, and how, like, especially in the Gaelic cultures, like there is a type of fae kind of everywhere, and I enjoy that a lot. I read ACOTAR when ACOTAR was popular and everyone was talking about it. So, of course, I went in knowing that you're supposed to love Rhysand and he's the best thing since sliced bread. So I went in and was like, right, well, I've picked out every single reason why I hate this character and why he is not the best thing since sliced bread. Nobody fucking listened. Everyone was like, no, Rhysand is still great. Rhysand is okay. But you're telling me that sexual assault is still okay because he did it for the right reasons.
And he has a tail.
It's like, what? Well, I mean, the tail is weird, but that's not the problem. It's the fact that everyone was like, no, but he was doing it for the right reasons. It's like, no, okay, sweet, I get it, but it was still sexual assault and done without her consent. And I was like, that is a big red flag for me anyway. And like, that was just like kind of it.
But I think that's the thing. It's certainly something that it doesn't trigger as many people as you think it would. And I think that is one of the things that you're fighting against with that, is you are having a physical reaction to something that actually other people are super into. And the idea that he's doing it for those right reasons is enough for them to excuse it. Because if they were to put themselves in that situation and they do find him attractive, and like Eliza Schlesinger does this really great bit where she talks about when someone that you find attractive finds you attractive, it's amazing. It's like, yeah, look at my butt. Isn't my butt great? Like, isn't it like, and because you have this whole like hype thing. But if someone you find unattractive starts showing you that same energy, that's when it's uncomfortable. And you can be unattracted to them for multiple reasons, because they're in a position of authority, because they know you in a way that is inappropriate, because they're a complete stranger catcalling you from a scaffolding, like whatever it is that means that there is that disattraction. The fact that there's like an active thing there that is going to make you uncomfortable. And I think the act for you, he could have been described as your ultimate type. And you would have had the same reaction.
Yeah, no, he definitely, like, context aside, if I had read it without knowing that I was supposed to love him, I would have fancied the pants off of him. Like, he was sexy, right? Yes, it was a bit weird, he had tails and wings, but like it's whatever. He like okay. But the thing that really was Sarah J. Maas, right? Fae romance queen. Okay, we all know this. The one thing that bamboozles me, Throne of Glass. What's the name of the character you're supposed to love in that?
Oh, Rowan. What's his face?
Rowan. So
you mean the absolute worst?
So tell me why everyone loves Rowan when it's a copy of paste of Tamlin, and everyone hates Tamlin and Akatar. With Rowan, it's fine. Yeah, Rowan can abuse the main character all the time, get her into situations, beat her up. The same way Tamlin treats Feyre. Akatar, unacceptable.
Here's the key difference. You want to know the key difference? It's the main character's choice. Selena chooses Rowan and continues to side with him, right? Whereas Feyre chooses Rhysand over Tamlin, and Tamlin can't take the rejection. And that is when he becomes vile in everyone's eyes. Because up until that point, he's just a fuckwit. Like, up until that point, he's done the exact same level of bullshit. And I'm absolutely with you, because I can't stand the Throne of Glass series, but I love Akatar. And part of the reason I can't stand Throne of Glass is because the only times Rowan is even remotely civil towards Selena is after he's nearly killed her.
Yeah, and I think that's what bothers me, because like there are literal copy, like cut and paste of things Tamlin did. Literally, like there are people who have put it side by side, and I'm just like, I can't make peace with this. Like, Rowan is such a piece of shit, and I get what you're saying.
Can I just say though that was not a book on our book list, and we should probably move on swiftly.
That's true. That is true. That is very true, because there is another book that I'm going to be ranting about.
There's, we've got at least 4 more books to go, and we've been talking for an hour and a half. So
okay, but that is my feelings on fantasy romance. Faye. I enjoy them, but maybe I should branch out from Sarah J. Maas.
Oh, you think?
But I liked Crescent City, so
still Sarah J. Maas. The First Woman by Jennifer McCumbee. I have in my most recent video attempted to say their middle name so many times, and I have fucked it every single time. This is an Eve retelling with, I want to say, Yoruba mythology. It's Ugandan mythology, folklore, and modern feminism. Now, did I realize when I picked this up that this is technically the second? No. Was I told that I could read it as a standalone anyway? Yes. Can you? No. I have no idea what's going on. and I'm just over 100 pages in. This is a chunky book.
Wait, which is the first one?
It's called something like, it's called Kintu.
Okay, so okay.
It doesn't come on Goodreads as a series, which is annoying.
Say that again.
It's not on Goodreads as like a series.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad that I haven't started this yet, because this means I could get the first one and maybe not go into this one confused.
I was just so bizarre. Like, it is really bizarre because it's magical realism. So, like I said, it's set in Uganda. You've got this main character who is very much a angry young woman, and she finds out that she has this witch magic within her. She wants to get back in contact with her mother, and for some reason, her gran is actively keeping her away from her mother. And you're not really sure why. And there are loads of instances where it's very clear that because of misogyny, that she is actively kept away from certain parts of society. She doesn't interact with people in a normal way. There's a lot of sexism, and there's a lot of like ways that she combats that. But the thing is, it's written in really big chapters that are then broken up into parts, and they're meant to be like facets of women. So you've got witch, bitch, mother, daughter, things like that, right? And these are meant to be stories that are told to kind of build up to a wider narrative. Now, I really struggled to get into this. I then picked up the audiobook, and the audiobook didn't help, but I think it's because it's one of those ones where I am going to need to listen to it slower than I would normally listen to an audiobook. And because I was trying to rush through it, and I was in the car trying to drive whilst I was listening to it, I really struggled. But it is by no means one that I don't want to try. So it's one of those ones where, like, for me, the form and writing style are actively difficult for me to comprehend. This is not an easy read, but I will feel so fucking accomplished when I have finished it. Does that make sense? So, like, yeah. I don't have a thing bad to say about this book. I think the mythology and stuff that I have seen thus far is really interesting. The characters are very messy, and I'm not mad about that at all. It is very modern. I can see why it has got so much critical acclaim. Like, Booker Prize winner readers will fucking lap this shit up.
I do wonder, from the description you just gave me, I read Blood to Poison, which is another, I can't remember which mythology it is, so forgive me, it was a little while ago, but it's a very similar BIPOC teen who has this blood magic that she wasn't aware of, and you know, it's the cultural thing for her that she doesn't realize she possessed, and it's her trying to find where that has come from. And that book is brutal, so it'll be interesting to read an adult version, because Blood to Poison is YA. So I wonder if it's a similar, if there's a similar kind of story thread, which maybe will help me a little bit.
Maybe.
The first woman is adult, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the last book that I read that I struggled to comprehend, that was like African mythology, was Stay With Me by Yemi Adyabi or something like that, or Adbabi or something like that. And that was about a woman who desperately wanted a baby, and she'd suffered several miscarriages, really, really was struggling, couldn't get pregnant, couldn't stay pregnant. And then she goes up to this mountain. She spends her last dime on this shaman and falls pregnant. You then find out that actually it's not a real pregnancy. It's one of those, I can't remember what they're called, but where a woman's body starts reacting like it's pregnant, and it's like a phantom pregnancy. Yeah. And she balloons like she's pregnant, but there's no baby in it. So when she then is confronted with that psychologically, she really struggles. She starts having an affair with her husband's brother. You then skip 10 years, and she has had a child, and it's from a different perspective. And it's from her husband, who's then got a new wife living with them, because it's common in Lagos to have multiple wives and things like that. So it was a whole thing. I found it really interesting, but it was a lot shorter as a story, it was a lot shorter. So you kind of get to where it's trying to go and try and get what the metaphors are for and what the message behind the book is a lot quicker. So I do think the fact that this is a longer story is probably because it's the sequel, like it's part of the same narrative. The writer has more room to play with it because they've already sold the first book and everyone's loved it because it won awards, the first one. But yeah, like you said, on Goodreads, does not say that it's a series, does not say that it's a sequel.
In the synopsis, it says at the very end, where is it? This book is billed as the companion to her acclaimed debut, Kintu.
Yeah.
The very last line.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's not technically a sequel, but there will be it's like a you'll see characters from.
Yeah, it's the main character is like yeah, so it's that was really hard to kind of like navigate, but I am interested in completing it. Right, let's have a look what's next on the list. There we go, one that we can both talk about because we have both finished it.
Where are my notes? Hold on.
Where are my notes?
Where are they?
I love that the author is called Django.
Yeah, this author's name ring a bell.
Django Wexler.
It's such a cool name. Like, this is an epic name. Like, I would love this name.
What, Django? I will call you Django from now on.
Django Wexler.
Django Wexler. That's identity theft, but I can call you Django.
It's such an epic name. Like, well done for writing a epic high fantasy. It wasn't the best epic high fantasy, but with a name like that, you should be writing epic high fantasy. And it wasn't awful. It isn't the best I've read.
It was so run of the mill. It was so 3 stars.
Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. And
you were being more generous than I was then. You want to read the sequel as well, don't you?
I do. And it's for one specific reason. And that is the fate of Kit Doomseeker. Because it's so funny to me. It's so amusing, her fate. Like, genuinely.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need to see that play out. Like, in the sequel, the way she ends up. Hannah, I need to know. I need to know how that sassy bean is going to survive in that fashion.
Okay, so concept. You have siblings. One is 8 and one is 5, and they're hanging out on their family's farm, except these sorcerer wizard soldier people rock up one day and basically say, right, your daughter, she's got magic, she's coming with us. And the brother, not impressed with having his sister taken from him, tries to stop them, and they take his eye as punishment for daring to defy them.
Oh, okay. Right. Small detail. Very small detail. The 8-year-old boy stabs the magic warrior wizard in the leg. And the warrior wizard, instead of being like, oh, you're 8 and I will be absolutely fine, turns around with like a massive whip and essentially slashes his eye out.
Yeah.
It's really gross. And it's kind of like, because we're seeing it from his eyes, right? We're in Gaia's mind, and Gaia's the brother. So it is very traumatic. It was hell of a way to start a book though, and I think the reason Hannah probably didn't like it was because Hannah was doing the audiobook and the audiobook wasn't very good.
There was 100 reasons why I didn't like it and why it didn't get more than it was fine, but reason number 1 why I didn't like it was the audiobook was read like it was a middle grade. The second reason why I didn't like it is because the siblings' names are Maya and Gaia.
No, but because I was reading it, I was like, oh, Mia. Like
because that makes all the difference. No, Mia and Gaia.
I didn't really think of it. I didn't really think about the names, to be honest, because epic and high fantasy names, I'm like, well,
at least I can pronounce these.
Yeah.
Just imagine though, naming your son Gaia, and then 3 years later you have a baby girl, and you're like, Maya.
I really believe it.
Yeah,
they name their kids after their like father.
Yeah, that's like a family name. That's not like, well, it rhymes. Who do you know whose name rhymes with their sibling?
Any twins?
Name one.
I need to think about all the bloody twins I know, because there's about 7 sets of twins and triplets in my year at school.
And do any of them have rhyming names?
I can't even remember half their fucking names.
You would remember if they rhymed. Like, you'd remember.
I love how this is the detail that we're stuck up on
It's
right
actually
now.
bothering me
That's
now
only
that
because
I
you
can
guys
picture-
decided to make it a thing, because you were like, oh, fantasy names. No, it's bullshit is what it is.
No, I just meant the beginning of the book of like why, like, I think it started off with the fact the audiobook was really bad, but like reading it, I was like, oh, okay, this is how we're starting with the book.
It was one of those things where the whole premise is that you've got these two siblings, and because of this thing that happens in chapter 1, they are now on opposing sides. And when they are finally confronted with each other years later, they're on either sides of this war. Now, considering this book is, let's have a look, it's like 700 pages long. Let's just ignore the glossary, which is like 30 pages in and of itself. 613 pages long. It's not until page 430 that these two characters see each other.
Ugh.
So where exactly is the conflict? Like, they literally, in the entire 600 pages, they bump into each other twice.
Yeah.
That's it. The stories are so separate. Their narratives are so separate. And I can absolutely understand why, but then have it be that their only time they see each other is in that finale where they are confronted with each other. And once again, they are fighting on two different sides. Except they're not really on two different sides. They both believe that something ain't working with the way the society is being run.
Yeah, I will say on that point, I do feel like it could have been two separate books. Like, I feel like this could have been a trilogy, because I know, again, there is a sequel. They could have done Mia's story, Gaia's story. Oh, they diverge.
Well, this is
Like,
the other thing, is they do a very similar thing to what Artemis Fowl did that really bothered me, which is they will have something happen and then they will skip back a little bit to have another character's perspective as that thing happens. So, like, say, for example, the brother is fighting a soldier, there's a big kaboom, and the cave starts to come in. It will then skip to the sister's perspective, where she is charging along to this place. She fights a whole bunch of people. She gets through them, and then she puts explosives in the wall to take it out. And that's what the kaboom is. And it's like, just have her wander in. You don't need any of that. I don't care about any of that. We knew she was heading in this direction. She could just rock up now. That's fine. And I just felt like sometimes there was conflict where there didn't need to be, which then meant that when the conflict was there, it meant very little. But it was very, if you like high fantasy and you like tropey fantasy, and if you like Brandy Sandy, you'll enjoy this for sure.
I think it was fun. I definitely was more invested in Gaia's storyline just because I liked, my favorite character was Kit. Now, Kit is like the saving grace for this book. She is this adventurer who kind of pops out of nowhere, and Doomseeker is like this name, like this tag, this, if you are an adventurer and you have been given the moniker Doomseeker, like you've done something absolutely insane. And Doomseeker is essentially an urban legend. And people don't really know if they exist, and it's about someone has found this old cave full of loads and loads of like old tech from like an ancient society that was killed off by the order that Mia joins. And Kit Doomseeker finds Gaia, and she is like really young. Like, I can't remember how young she is. She's like early 20s, I think. And Guy's immediate thing is, well, you're obviously not Doomseeker. Like, I don't believe you.
Doomseeker would be so much older.
Like, I'm expecting an old man, like an old grizzled man, and you are like totally not him. And she's just like, how fucking rude. Like, how dare you? Like, what proof do you want? And he's like, take me to the cave. And she's like, sure, like we can go there. But like, first, you need to do something for me. And the thing I liked about her was that she was so unabashedly like, bitch, please. Like,
she was such a psycho.
Yeah,
she was
like,
such a psycho.
I loved her so much, and there were things that happened, and I liked Gaia's like found family, like his group of absolute miscreants. Again, very tropey. There was like every trope in that little found family, like in a fantasy book you could like ever think of. They were all there. But I just loved the camaraderie, and I just liked that bit, really.
I found her too much of a dichotomy, because we find out that her main purpose is to have herself released from this bond that she has with this demon guy who is basically keeping her alive. Her heart doesn't work, but his magic keeps her heart ticking away. And he keeps topping it up, but he won't do it permanently until she's done working for him, basically. And yet, this woman goes out of her fucking way trying to get shot, trying to get squished by big old monsters, trying to fight things that are 3-4 times her size. And I'm just like, do you want to live? Do you want to live?
The other thing, the big, like, godlike creatures that are, like, in the cave, right? The ghouls, or whatever they call them. All I could think was they all look like Sully from Monsters, Inc. Because the way they were described as these really tall, like, I can't say a fucking word.
Anthropomorphized.
Yeah, animals with, like, there were fur all over. I was like, well, you're fucking Sully from Monsters, Inc. All I could see. So, like, they're supposed to be these really scary, like, terrifying creatures, and I was like, all right, you're either Sully from Monsters, Inc. or you're a guy in a fursuit. That's it.
I didn't get that vibe at all. I was thinking more like anime monsters, you know, where they're like a mixture of like creepy critters and things like
We're two
that.
different people, Hannah. I think we've just proven that.
Clearly.
I'm just imagining Bigfoot. It's the best I'm getting right now.
There was a little bit of that. There was a little bit of that. But to be fair, like Doomseeker felt like a poor man's fireburned girl from Game of Thrones. What's her name? The one that like dates Jon Snow.
Daenerys.
No.
His actual wife.
Yeah, his actual wife. Huh?
Sansa?
It's like Ygritte.
Ygritte, yeah.
It was that kind of like, don't assume that because I'm a woman I won't fuck shit up. I will. And I will do it like a psycho. And I will kill a man and then I will have sex with you because I just killed a man. And it's very much like that energy the whole way through, which worked in some places and then didn't work in others. And then there was like this whole conflict where like she ignores him and like goes and like has a night with someone else and he feels all sad about it. And she's like, you're not beholden to me. And I'm like, not beholden to you. And then like later on, she's like, we should have sex. And he's like, but I need you to tell me that you like me. Like, and I'm just like, oh, you're adults. Just
to be fair,
please act like adults.
One of the notes I have down, and it was, I wish I could ask the author, right? And I wrote down, why didn't Kit and Gaia not bang sooner? Because there were so many like moments where I was like, oh, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And then when it happened, I was like, not like this.
Do you know what's really funny? It's because you had told me that before I'd even started it. So when you were like, oh, so there's these two characters, and this is how Lizzie said it to me. There's these two characters where it's been really obvious they're going to have sex, but once they did have sex, I was like, not like that. And the whole time I was like, I don't understand where you got any tension from between these two characters, because she literally acts like a child until she's suddenly horny and suddenly she's an adult. And like he even like talks about her like she's a child, like the way she reacts to stuff, the way she winds people up, the way she interacts with like literally every other character. I was convinced he was going to get with the rebellion lady, and something happens to Rebellion Lady. It's very sad. And he's just kind of like, I've let her down. And then goes chasing off after Doomseeker again. And I'm like, oh, okay. You had more feeling for this woman and now you don't give a shit. Like, I don't know. I found a lot of it very convenient. It was convenient that he was angry when he was angry. It was convenient that she was psycho or horny when she was psycho or horny. And I just felt like I didn't believe any of it. And then when it came to Maya's storyline, again, it felt very convenient. It felt very convenient that she was a fish out of water. And it's like, there doesn't necessarily need to be, like, I would have believed it more if she actually had there's one character who is very straight-laced, who goes by all the rules, who believes everything he's told, etc. I would have believed the story more if she were that character, if she were that person who's like, I was raised by these people, I believe everything they've told me, I have been fully institutionalized, my brother is the villain. Like, I would have believed that more. But the fact that she's already umming and ahhing if the way they do things is right, I was just kind of like, that's convenient. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's kind of why I gave it 3.5 stars, because there was no moment that was left to be sat. Like, you didn't get a quiet moment to sit with any of the things that happened. Like, people die in this book, right? And things happen to characters that are very, like, traumatic, like when you like think about them, but you never got to sit with those moments. There was no moment to take in, because as soon as that happened, we would flip to the other perspective, right? And then we'd be going through a whole different thing with the different characters. That was like the main thing. It didn't feel like there was any character growth, because it was one note, because we were following both of these characters who just kind of felt like they were on a plateau and they didn't really learn from their mistakes. And like, that's one of the main things about this book. It's very much a setup for book 2. And not in the same way that the Blood Trials are, because the Blood Trials had substance in it and there was really interesting plot points. This is purposefully a setup, because the ending, loads of shit happens. And for me, that made me want to read on. And that's because I want to know the fate of one particular character. But it's just so one-dimensional. Like, when a load of the teammates die, there is nothing. There is no emotion. There's no like reason for this character to react the way he does, other than he's purely doing everything for selfish reasons. And he doesn't take the consequences of what he has done into account. Like, he doesn't take ownership the fact that this is his fault, right? And it truly is, because he lets his whole team down by not being in a certain place, and he doesn't even bother to warn them. He says he's going to. We never
and then just forgets.
Yeah, we never see him do it. It's never said, like, nothing is said about it again. It's like, my dude, that's on you. Like, that really is on you. And so when there's a character at the end who has been housing him, who helps him when he comes back injured, she's like, get out of my fucking house. Like, how dare you? Like, you came back here. Like, you really think that I'm going to accept you? After this, you are not welcome here ever again, essentially. And it's the first moment where I'm like, okay, so the author didn't forget that this happened. Okay, so that was a choice, that the character was going to act like that. So that's why it got a 3.5-star rating, although the story, it could have been interesting, but the characters were too one note for me.
Yeah. For showsies. Do you think you'll pick that one up, Emma?
No, that's the Spastic book, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I had totally forgotten about that.
I need to just preface this by saying I skim read quite a lot of this book, and I totally missed both times, because I would have said to Hannah, oh shit, because I have in other books when I noticed things. So I must have definitely,
I
don't know what my brain did, but my brain went, nope.
Anytime. So there's these thing called constructs, and they're essentially monsters that have this malformed soul that then eats other creatures that then adds to it. So if you imagine like a rabid dog eats another dog and becomes a bigger dog, so it will have like 2 jaws, more claws, etc. Like, it just adds to itself by devouring this flesh. And they move in a really jarring way. And every time Gaia comes up across one, he uses that word to describe them. I get what he's saying. I understand that he's saying that they're moving in this really like inhuman, jarring way. But
that's what makes it worse, though, because that word was used for people like me. And then it's like, but we don't do that, do we? We're not monsters. I don't know why I'm talking like that.
We know monsters. I'm like,
we know monsters.
But I legit do not know how I missed it.
Like, don't worry, Lizzie. I'm not going to.
It came out in 2020. We're using that word in 2020.
Like,
are we?
How the fuck though? I don't know. I'm not going to reread this book. Okay, I'm just going to say that right now. This book is never being read again because it's so chunky. But it will be a word I'm looking out for in the sequel, because if it's in that as well, like, the author clearly didn't listen to. Or get like any sensitivity readers, because I doubt that would have passed if he did. But I don't understand how I missed it. Like, when Hannah said it, I was like, wait, serious?
It was really bizarre. So it was one of those ones, like I said, I was listening to it as an audiobook, and I spent 4 hours just hanging out in a hotel room because I'd stayed the night before a wedding. I didn't realize the wedding wasn't starting until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I spent like all day, just like getting myself ready, like having like a proper pamper sesh and listening to my audiobook. And I was like, this is fine because it's really low impact, low effort. If I miss a story, like if I'm doing my hair and like drying my hair, I'm not going to miss much. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not going to be the end of the world. Was traumatized because I was standing in my towel at one point and the housekeeper just wandered in. Love that for me. But regardless, and I was sat there like relaxing, and then I would hear the word and I'd be like, oh.
That was like me.
Are you sure?
That was like me listening to Spare every single time the word todger, penis. Like
I was going to talk to you about that because I thought it was really interesting because I saw this theory earlier today that was essentially like, I can't remember who it was, but someone came out about something that they knew was going to be leaked. They'd heard that this like story, this scandal was going to be leaked about them. So what they did was they did loads of press about it just before it came out. So like they knew the story was coming and they kind of made it so that you couldn't make jokes about it and you couldn't sell the story because it had already come out. And this person has this theory that the reason Harry has put so many embarrassing stories about himself in this book is so that it can't be used against him. Like people can't then sell those stories elsewhere.
The stories themselves aren't embarrassing. Like the whole him getting frost nip on his penis. It's like, if that's something that happened, you know, you're talking about doing this charity event with these like amputee war veterans, and you state it, and I got frost nip on my penis. And he says at one point, he's like, I couldn't really complain about it because, still these guys have it worse. That wasn't embarrassing. That was fine. It's when he's had to leave early from this like North Pole expedition to go to Willie's wedding. He always calls him Willie. And I'm like, this is just becoming ridiculous. But like, it's like after the wedding, I don't know exactly the timeline because I just kept kind of zoning out. But eventually these veterans get to the North Pole and they phone Harry to be like, hey, you were on the expedition with us. And that is where the quote, my penis was oscillating between extremely sensitive and borderline traumatized, which makes no sense to me anyway. But that was him he brought that up to be like, oh, remember I had frost nip there? Because he hadn't had it cured at this point. He then goes to a doctor. But I'm like, this is what makes it embarrassing. It's not the fact that you had that. It's the fact that these men that you sat and like lauded for being so brilliant and how you couldn't complain about your dick, they make the North Pole and you can't even be excited because you have to just tell us that instead of being proud of them, your penis was traumatized.
Yeah, that's because he's a white man, though. He can't help that. He can't help being self-centered.
I'm sorry, Emma. I bought Spare because TikTok sounds made me so curious. You've just solidified how much I'm now even more curious because like this is the thing. I was like, TikTok are taking a lot of these snippets of the audiobook and taking them out of context. So I need to see if they make more sense.
It doesn't make more sense. It's even worse.
But like I literally need to read it just to be able to have that opinion.
The whole book itself, like I see all these people that are like, oh, it's such a brilliant book, it's so well written, and I'm like, it was terrible.
Do you know what's really interesting is Olivia and I had the same conversation about I'm glad my mum died, because both of us were like, it's a powerful story. It's very emotive. It's very evocative. It looks at really important topics through a really friendly, familiar face and voice. It's not well written
Harry's
at all.
Like, he didn't have anyone there that sat down and went, what do you want to talk about? And it's like, I wasn't shocked. Like nothing, the penises was a lot, but I didn't feel like I listened to that. And like, I didn't feel like I was listening to it and being like, oh my God, like this happened. Like there was like 2 or 3 times that William like ran at him and like attacked him and beat him up or something. And I was a bit like, this is our future king. He's violent. But I'm like, I wasn't shocked because I'm like, I don't know these people. Like, I don't know William and Kate beyond their, like, public appearances.
That persona, yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if he is an aggressive man. Like, so it wasn't like, well, yeah, obviously. But, like, I wasn't, like, Hannah in the corner, like, oops, my secret's revealed. No, but
God, can you fucking imagine? Can you fucking imagine if you
would have?
I couldn't keep that fucking secret from you guys. You'd know. I'd tell the whole Discord. I'd be like, oh man. I also wouldn't need to rent if I'd worked on that book. So
But yeah, like it just there wasn't anything that I read like that was revealed that I was like, oh my god, like tea. I was just like, cool, didn't know that about these people. But there wasn't any sort of like storyline. I know it's like a memoir, a biography, but it was just like, so this happened, and then it'd be like, oh, and I remember this, and I was like, what point do you want to make? Like, it wasn't like he was telling us these little vignettes to then be like, yeah, so like this is why I left, because like it was just all a little bit disjointed, and I think the issue was is you could kind of sit and look at it and go, oh yeah, like his family didn't treat him well in this part. But he just didn't go far enough. Like you could tell certain things, like he didn't really want to talk ill of his grandmother. Like when he asked approval to get married, he kind of just went, he was like, oh, I think she was joking, but like, I don't know. And I was like, you either need to tell this story, make your damn points, like share everything and round it out and give me a conclusion, or you need to shut the fuck up. Because it was just a whole bunch of like, okay, and then things like the Nazi costume, that whole thing, like all these little things, whenever he's fucked up, you can tell that the guy's traumatized, he's got a lot of issues and needs therapy, but his whole thing was not about his own accountability. So like the Nazi costume, it was a case of, oh yeah, I phoned Willie because there was only this Nazi costume and this like other thing, I think it was Ghostbusters or something, and so he phoned them, and Will and Kate said to get the Nazi costumes. He's like, so that's why I got it. And then when the newspapers came out, like, oh, I knew I'd messed up and I can't believe I did it. But like, you know, Kate and Will told me to. And I'm like, still your fucking choice.
Yeah, but
like,
he's a younger sibling. He's always going to blame his older sibling, isn't he?
But yeah,
I'm just saying that to trigger Lizzie. So
yeah,
I do think it's one of those things where that with some celebrity memoirs, you can tell it's because they've got a narrative to tell. And some of them, I do think with his, there is a part of it that is like, I need to get ahead of this. And the more he throws out, the more it's kind of...
I think what was hard is it felt almost uncomfortable, because in a way it was like reading it. And obviously I was listening to the audiobook, so I was literally listening to him telling it. And it was that way where I just got this vibe where I was like, you know, you're talking about going to therapy, but you've not had enough. Like this book is not what you need to be doing. This is conversations you need to be having with, like, the fact that I was sitting there listening to some stuff and being like, you know, having my own family problems, you need to talk about this more and process it. If I'm thinking that, you probably should go to a therapist and deal with it more, because it was just like, especially just the way that, just, I don't know, it was just the way he wrote about it. It just, certain things, it was just like, I could just tell that he didn't feel the way, like, it's just like he's sort of naive to it and closed off. And I'm like, you're not accepting of everything yet. And like, just, it was just weird. I gave it 2 stars because that's just, 15 hours I'll never get back.
I mean, that is how time works. Speaking of time we'll never get back, I actually didn't mind The Promise of Blood. So I don't have my copy because I left it in Folkestone because I'm an idiot.
And I didn't get that one.
You didn't get that one, which really surprised me because it's high fantasy. And essentially...
But it was the cover. The cover put me off. The cover made it look like a...
So this cover was fine, but that cover was too much.
Yes. No. Well, no. It made it look like a male-dominated fantasy. I don't know how to
Brian McClellan.
Yeah,
I don't know. There was something about that dude on the throne. There was just something about it that it just put me off.
You judgy bitch.
Yeah, I'm a judgy bitch. I judge the first cover.
Brian McClellan, to answer your question. So, Promise of Blood is essentially a Civil War retelling, but instead of just casual gunpowder, it's gunpowder-based magic system. So they are able to kind of control where they shoot more accurately because they can use their magic to do that. There are other magic users, I think they called them like magicians or something along those lines, that were basically able to use any kind of magic and could smother or hinder gunpowder magic. And essentially, yeah, it's not a great cover. But essentially the main plot follows 3 men. The first is a general who has basically created a coup against the king and basically forced the king out of power. and kills the king, takes over this battlement, and then has to hold it. And he does so because even though he has fought for this king for years, he doesn't agree with the choices this king has made. It's very kind of revolutionary in the fact that the king was spending money he didn't have to fight wars he didn't need to fight, was kind of smothering his people and not giving them food, not providing them shelter. Very like standard anti-monarchy rhetoric. His son has a gunpowder addiction, so he is like sniffing gunpowder and uses the high that magic gives him to again fight whatever it is his father points him to. And his entire storyline is that him and his ex-wife are fighting to be top dog in his dad's army, and he resents the fact that he has to fight for this position. Now in the meantime, he is working alongside this other magic user who he thinks is a young woman. He treats her like a child pretty much the entire way through, and then it turns out she's like 25 and he's just like, oh cool, you're an adult, we can have sex now. Which is like, yeah, didn't enjoy that. He was my least favorite character. Like of all of them, there was nothing really redeemable about him, but his scenes were the most action-packed. And then the third character is this guy who is a detective, and basically his magic, he can sense where magic has been and he can tap into what kind of magic someone has. So as an investigator, he is very good at finding people because he can basically trace through the magic that's in the air and follow the gunpowder trail, as it were. And it's a really interesting one because it's very steampunk. It's very much a mix of, they have carriages and horse-drawn things, but they also have guns and technology. And they're also climbing this mountain to find this Tibetan monk temple type thing, because there is a guy up there who can literally stop, like, I can't remember what they call it, but basically you connect with this magic barrier that gunpowder gives you the ability to connect to, or like they're kind of like threaded through. He can basically cut you off from that. So say, for example, you have the ability to create fire with your hands. He can literally touch you once and you will never create fire from your hands ever again. And like, he can't give it back to you. He can, like, his job is just to kind of like splice between it. And because he was seen as a threat, he was kind of sent away. So the son then goes to look for him and it becomes this whole thing. Now it is a trilogy. So again, book one is very much a setup for all of the conflicts that are coming. What I really enjoyed about it was how the mythology built upon itself. So you have these established factions. You then have the turncoats. There's a young woman who is working as a washerwoman. She has the prince that she's like trying to keep safe, but she can't keep him safe because people can't know who he is. They can't know who she is, etc. She has been storing money and coinage, and kind of gets broken out by someone from the other side, like a whole thing. And you've also got this guy who is my favorite character in the whole thing, who is just a chef who makes food out of nothing. And when he introduces himself, he's like, oh yeah, I'm a god. Like, my brother tried to have me arrested because he doesn't want people to know that there are other gods, but I'm a god. So I'm just, all I want to do is fill your kitchens with good smelling food. And everyone thinks he's crazy right up until he literally has like a vat of soup that he like feeds 1,000 people with. And they're like, he must have some way of like regenerating the soup. And all the generals are like, no, we've looked at our food stores. This food shouldn't be here. Like, the food that we have, it's come from nowhere. And like, the general keeps like having these conversations with him and being like, where are you getting this food from? And he's like, oh, I'm a god. Like, I told you that right at the start. Like, did you not believe me? And he's like, no, obviously I don't believe in God. Like, and it's like, so there's things like that where they were just really interesting to see the way the world building was layered. It was very masculine. It was very heavily male centric. And I do think I disliked it purely because there were elements of it that I had just finished Firefly, and that again was very male centric. And I was like, please give me a female protagonist that has more screen time than like 2 minutes, you know? So there were those sorts of things, but I was trying to work out what you were saying. What are you talking about? Like Easter Island head? What?
No, the coat. It looks like the profile of an Easter Island head.
Oh, what? This one?
Yeah.
Oh, it
And I
does.
just- And I just kept
Oh,
thinking about the night at the museum, the one that Easter Island head that just keeps wanting gun. I was just sat there trying to listen to you talking excitedly with the book, and I'm like,
that's fair. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I thought you meant like over here. I was like,
no, that's why I said in the
nothing
coat.
Wait, do you think I'd like Promise of Blood?
Yeah.
Or do you think my gut feeling towards it was that it?
No, I think, to be honest, how forgiving you were of Ashes of the Sun, I would not be surprised if you liked The Promise of Blood.
It is just the cover. It's such a shame. The cover really put me off, like genuinely, and I feel bad about that. But it was the cover that
I think even if like I know so it's really irritating. It's one of those ones where the first book you have to pay for on Audible, but the second two are on Scribd for free.
I hate that. That's
So
rude.
I would say if it comes up on Scribd for free, as like, and it might just be that I've been listening to too many, so it doesn't give it to me as the option.
No, I just looked. It's not there.
It's not there. I would give it a go.
I'd be tempted by the audiobook, but I don't want to pay for it.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I got it in the 2-for-1 sale.
Nice.
Look at that one's cover, though. I don't know what language this is, but
see, if it looked like that, I'd be in.
But yeah, so it's just, but it is very American Civil War inspired gunpowder magic. And what I like the fact is it was a hard magic system. It is told to you how it works. There are additional layers, like the investigator is clearly in a debt with gangsters, and there are threats on his family if he doesn't find someone. And there are stakes and there is drama and people do die. There's no real hiding from the fact that they are in war and therefore war crimes are committed. You know, it's that kind of thing. But I actually was pleasantly surprised because the prompt for that one was a steampunk fantasy. And a lot of the steampunk fantasies that I wanted to try weren't as readily available. They're far more of like an Amazon genre than standard traditional publishing. And the ones that have been traditionally published have been out for like 5 or 6 years. They're clearly like not trendy anymore. So I didn't want to risk picking up something that was super old. So with this one, the third one had just come out as a paperback. So I was like, well, it will be a few years old, but I'm hoping not too many people have read it, because that was the other thing that very much hindered me when it came to picking good books for those prompts, was the fact that if it hadn't come out recently, there was no guarantee that you guys didn't already own them. So I am trying, and same with this year, I am trying to make sure that they are new releases or newer releases for the sub box. But I think it will generally be easier that it's all Gothic, because I think if there's Gothic books you don't like, it's not the end of the world, but at least it's all a genre that we're chill with, you know? But bearing that in mind, there is one left that we need to discuss. And that is the Shadow People. Now, I was hoping Ali would be here for this one. Now, Ali's at a doctor's appointment. There's no way that she could have repostponed or anything like that. I got 13 pages in before I DNF'd. And I was going to try it as an audiobook, but I was told not to bother. Ali got barely a few more pages ahead of me. Lizzie, would you like to give us your thoughts?
Right. I listened to this while I was at work. Now I can listen to audiobooks at work, whatever. The only way I finished this book was that it was an audiobook. It's fucking lucky that by the time that I was ready to give up on it, there was only like an hour and a half left, and that was on 2 times speed. And by that point, I'm already in. Like, and I fucking hated this book. Like, hated it. I gave it 1 star, and that was kind. Graham Masterton, if you don't know, has been around for donkey's years, and he is supposed to be a king of horror. So I went in with very high expectations because people sing Graham Masterton's praises, and I was like, this is really exciting. This is the first book I'm going to read by this author. So if you wanted to offend any
Everyone.
marginalized,
Anyone and everyone.
every single one, this is how to do it. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, is this written in the 80s? Oh no, it was written really recently, and there are recent pop culture references that are really badly done. That is a whole nother thing. That's an aside, but it's very much written in the modern day, 2020s kind of era.
I would also say I thought he was an American because the way he writes British dialogue, I was like, he has to be American. No, he's a Brit.
No. So the premise of this book: two police detectives, right, and a police force are in this London office. There is a series of these books that follow these same two characters. If they are like this in every single book, I feel sorry for anyone who continues to read these books because it's not good. And basically, the premise of this one is there is a cannibalistic cult that is terrorizing, I think it's London. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
It feels very Met Police. I would not be surprised.
It's a
The
metropolitan,
racism and misogyny makes it feel like it
I'm
could be the
getting
Met
there.
Police.
I'm getting there. And they're a cannibalistic tribe, just in the underground. That's where they chill out. And there is they think it's a demonic cult because every time they find these victims, there's a demonic painting, like in the underground tunnels, and there's like bones, and it's all really fucking weird. And it's very much relies on the gore, the goriness of cannibalism, right? That's what this book relies on, which would be fine, but it's a police procedural, but we also follow the villains. So we follow the cannibals. So there is no mystery because the reader knows exactly what's going on the entire fucking time. So, I think it's page 12. Transphobia. Fabulous. One of the cannibals is caught, and they are obviously a trans woman. And it's very much like that they say it like that. And then they are referred to the man in the dress from here on out, which is like really gross and not required in 2022. Like, why would you do that? Then, as you get to know the villains of the story, they are villains. They're cannibals. They are literally eating and murdering people in really horrific ways. Like, they are the villains. But none of them are white. They're all POC characters. They're all people of color. There's no white characters apart from the two boys who are kidnapped by them. Those two are two little white boys. The rest of them are all people of color, and they all have some sort of mental health issue. And they're the villains of the story. Oh, and they're all homeless as well. So when I say, if you want to offend as many marginalized groups, this one does it. Takes the cake. And it's just the other really disturbing thing about this. So there's graphic conversations about cannibalism. Just having that in a book does not make a horror book, right? Horror has substance. Gore does not make it horror. Gore makes it, I don't know, gore porn. Like, you're getting off on this, like, disgusting thing. And the worst thing about this is, I don't know what Graham Masterton has some weird obsession with penises. Because there are so many mentions. But there are so many penis mentions, like, literally out of nowhere. And it's like, the first time it happened, I was like, that was really weird. Didn't require that. And then after it happened, like, the 7th or 8th time, I was like, Hannah, it's happened again. Too many penis mentions. And it's like, I don't get it. Because there's he doesn't talk about, like, female genitalia or anything. There's nothing about, like, women's tits or asses or anything. It's just penis.
I would almost put money that there were, like, female genitalia, boob, and stuff like that references. But then his editor was like, that might be seen as sexist.
Well, they were talking about fucking, like, they were chaining the victims to a wall, right, completely naked. But it was just the men that they were talking about. Yes, the women were there. And basically, the magic side of this is, you know, I said about this demon thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, they're taking this drug, and then it makes them into like Neolithic, like old caveman language type thing, right? Like, and it makes them all speak in like grunts and like back to like a very base, because this demon god is essentially ordering them. And the reason that they kidnap the kids is because they think they're some sort of, basically like the demon version of Christ, right? Like they are coming, they are. And to be fair to them, the kids play into it, and I'm like, fair play to you kids. You know what you're doing. You're trying to stay alive. Appreciate it. But the two police detectives, sorry, I forgot about them. They're still being very racist, very misogynistic, and extremely stupid. And one of them is of Pakistani descent. I couldn't remember if it was Indian or Pakistani, and I'm pretty sure it's Pakistani. And what they do there is, every time, so you'd expect a person of color in the Met Police to get hella uncomfortable when there's racism going on, right?
I want
But
a
she doesn't
refund on my books.
Right?
But this,
I'll read you the synopsis at the end of this, and you can see why I was duped.
I
but
mean, the
this,
cover's intriguing me.
Right?
everything about this was going to be great. It wasn't. But then the police, so she doesn't even flinch. They are racist towards her, and she's just like, okay. And the reason that she's a person of color in this book is so that she can conveniently know all about Pakistani demons. And of course, she's from her homeland. She knows about all these stories. Oh, and this is weirdly related because in her homeland, everyone are they're all really like not civilized, and it's really brutal, and like people are brutalized in Pakistan. Like, it's literally written that way, so she's plot conveniently not white so that she can tell the white characters who are ignorant of other cultures about this demon she heard about when she was a kid, and all these stories that like reminded her. So of course it's the same thing. And I'm like, how dare you have a main character who is a Pakistani woman, which is incredible, great rep, and then use her for plot convenience? How fucking dare you? So I'm kind of interested to see if in the first book, I'm never reading Grey Marston again, but if I were to, I'd be interested to see if in the first book, which follows the same police detectives, what they're like in that one. Because they can't, like, she can't be a plot convenience every single time. That So yeah, there was lots of things that are wrong about this book, but those were the specific things that really fucking got on my wick.
I do feel like, going back to this, I'm going to read you the synopsis so that you can understand where I came from in thinking this is going to be a really fun, dark horror
I
read.
do not blame Hannah at all for this one. Like, genuinely, I was shocked because when Hannah reads you the synopsis, it does, like, that doesn't even come into it. So I don't blame Hannah for this, but this one, stay away from.
A burning pyre, an ancient ritual, a cult of cannibals. The smell of roasting meat alerts police officers to squatters in an abandoned London factory, but when they arrive, the place is empty, except for a gruesome pile of scorched human remains. DC Jerry Pardo and DS Jamila Patel have solved bizarre crimes before, but nothing as grisly as this. Mysterious markings on the factory wall lead them to a terrifying cult in thrall to a Neolithic god, one who demands the ultimate sacrifice from his followers. Now Londoners are being abducted off the city streets to be mutilated, roasted, and eaten. Can Pardo and Patel save the next victim from this hideous fate, or will they themselves be offered up as a human sacrifice?
Oh, that fucking reminds me, the ending is so stupid. Oh my god, it's so dumb. So they capture one of the cannibals. I'm just gonna fully ruin this because
no one here is ever reading it.
So they go after this cannibal cult, right? Because they found one of the boys. They managed to capture one of the boys, and he's in hospital, like, recovering. They're getting the drug out of his system, so he's being able to speak words again. They also capture an older man, and it's so stupid. He basically says, oh, he's a rival cannibal cult because there's more than one in London. There's like a rival cult. He's like, we believe in the same thing as you, but you're doing it wrong.
They're like coffee franchises. They're on every corner.
The funniest thing about this, right, is the cult that we're supposed to be following, who kidnaps the boys, is run by a woman. Right? And so this other cult is all men. And I'm like, okay, this is like a weird conflict you put in for zero reason. So they come in being like talking all big and they're like weird grunts because of course they can speak this language that doesn't exist anymore.
Hmm.
And they capture him, and so then they start like trying to flush his system, and he says to them, "Now I can take you to their cult, right? I know where they are. They're in the underground tunnels. I can show you. But if you want to stop them, I can call the god forward, and he will kill them because they're not doing everything correctly." The police officers go, "Yeah, let's try it. Let's call this ancient god into the world who is making people into cannibals, and let him loose because that seems like a safe thing to do." So then they go into the tunnels. One of the DCs, so the male DC, goes, "Okay, well, I'm going to go into this cult and pretend to be one of them," as if that's not going to go wrong real fast. And the female DC goes with this man into the underground to this painting of this goat-headed man, demon thing. And then they start doing this ritual. And then everything goes dark. She sees some eyes. She can't move. Then she smells like goat breath. And then everything goes dark, and then she follows these sound of hooves down a tunnel. That's how it ends. They've released a demon goat. Oh no, it doesn't end like that. It ends to another set of boys, of twin boys, who see goat eyes in the dark. And that's how it ends. So this god, they've just released a demonic god into the world. Great.
Well,
Sweet.
looking at the first book, it's called Ghost Virus. They work for Tooting Police.
Oh, good.
But it appears to be a virus that makes people then like kill each other, I guess. So the two detectives are trying to discover they're trying to defeat the ghost virus. Because that sounds like a detective's job,
Yep.
not a scientist.
Well, they're a paranormal
Oh, okay.
police force, apparently.
The second book is called The Children God Forgot, and it is about a rash of strange and horrifying births sweep through London.
Why would you live in London? It sounds awful.
So yeah,
Right.
a young woman is rushed into hospital with stabbing pains. The chief surgeon performs a C-section and delivers a catastrophically malformed fetus that is somehow alive.
Oh no.
Okay. There's a lot of really weird babies being, but what? This doesn't sound like horror. This just sounds like.
Look, I'm not here for censorship, but someone needs to take Graham Masterton's laptop away from him and never let him write another book.
You know something super interesting? After I finished this book, I read some of the reviews, and the reviews are wild because they're either a 1-star or a 5-star. And
There is no in between.
I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, who read this and thought, yeah, like genuinely?
The people that make that noise, probably.
No, but like, there are things in here. Like, there are so many red flags and like so many things, especially because it was like, if it's written in the 80s, okay, it doesn't make it okay, but I can understand.
You can rationalize it at least.
Yeah, I can rationalize it.
On LSD.
But like, this was written like too recently for it to be acceptable. And it was just like, from page 12, when they started referring to a trans character as a man in a dress, I was like, this is not okay. Like, it's not okay in any shape or form. But then it just got progressively more and more bad. Like, as soon as you realize that all of the cult members are all people of color, right? Like, that alone is an issue. And also
the dialogue, it's the way. Sorry, okay, actually, I'm gonna read a little bit because the reason I DNF'd it was because of the. Huh?
Oh no, the man was born in Edinburgh. I don't claim him.
Sorry, yeah, he is Scottish. I did know that.
I do not claim this man.
Doesn't he look like everyone's weird friend's dad?
He literally
does. Okay, so the smell of scorching meat, though, was pungent and fresh, as if it were sizzling on the grill. Squatters, most likely in it, bruv, said Dwayne.
Dwayne.
I forgot that his fucking name was Dwayne.
Dwayne. And then you've got, that's making me feel well hungry. I didn't have no breakfast yet. I'm putting on my best Ali G impression. This is definitely an Ali G impression. He's responded to by his partner by saying, well, if you're lucky, there'll be some left for you. So it's like, it's okay. White people can talk normal. Like, literally the way he speaks is so upsetting.
I'm pretty sure that character dies as well.
Of course he fucking does. Of course he does.
I'm pretty sure he gets whacked.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like, I was so upset when I like finished it because I was just like, this was the one that I was most excited for, like as part of this book club, because as I said, I've been really getting to horror recently. So this one hurt me the most. The same way that Hannah was hurt by Shadow in the Glass. I didn't like Shadow in the Glass, but it didn't mean as much to me.
It didn't infuriate me the way.
Like they both got 1 star. As I said, the 1 star is generous, like for shadow people. It doesn't.
If I could have given 0.2 stars,
I would have done. It's just, I don't understand how this is what we're writing. Like in
some people can be like, oh yeah, I've never read Stephen Graham Jones, but this is fine. My guy, pick up Stephen Graham Jones. It's so good.
Books like this give me the fear when it comes to writing, because I just think it doesn't fucking matter how good my writing is or how good my plot is or anything. It's literally just fucking sheer luck that you send it to an agent who's that sleep deprived that they just accept it.
Upside, if this can get published, anything can.
Yeah, but then what if I don't get published? Do you know what I mean? Then it's like,
then you'll do what I do, Emma, and you'll self-publish.
But the thing is, right, there's very much, they did not get sensitivity readers. They didn't give a shit, right?
Did anyone read it? That's my question. I feel like someone just said...
Do you know what, though? I know that if I gave it to my mom, she'd like it. Because she reads problematic shit all the time. And like when I was telling her about something the other day that I read that was like a really like dark horror like book, she was like, oh, that sounds like really interesting. And then she was telling me about this book that she read that she's like, oh, you need to try this one by like Yo Nesbo or someone like that. I don't know if it was Yo Nesbo, but basically it's this guy essentially has a grenade stitched into his mouth, and like he has to like do, it's very like Saw 3, where it's like he has to do something to like, but it basically the writer then goes into graphic description as how the grenade like has these nails sticking out of it, so that as it explodes it like tears through his skin. And my mum is like just telling me this whilst casually driving through the Kentish countryside. And just like,
don't get me wrong, I don't mind gore in horror books. That's not the issue. That isn't the issue. Like Leech, there is gore in that, but that is one of my favorite books of 2022. Like it is graphic, but there's more to it than just the graphicness. Like, and I think that's the thing about horror. You have to have more substance, and this did not have substance. And I can tell you right now, if Graham Masterton wasn't an established author, I don't think this would have been published. Purely because of how much awful rhetoric is in this book. And I think if Graham Masterton, if he was a debut author, there would have been sensitivity readers, like publishers would have been less inclined to write that, like to publish it. But he's an established author. He's been around for fucking ages. It's not policed in the same way.
Like I probably didn't even bloody read it. They probably just went, yeah, sure, it's the third one.
Thank you. But like I do feel like debut authors are set to a different standard than established authors. And this has proven it to me. Like time and time again, I see it all the time with established authors versus debut authors. And I'm finding I'm enjoying debut authors a lot more than established authors. Like again, Higher and Ends, they are a debut non-binary author. Fantastic writer. So much better than this crap.
The way that publishers hold established authors compared to like debuts is really interesting, because I remember going back to Estelle, one of her books was coming out and there was a launch, and obviously she asked me to go along with her, so I went, and I was sat next to one of the rights people. She does like foreign rights, and I remember some of the other like reviewers were there asking questions, and the person that worked in the publishing house was saying that one of the things that they love the most about working with Estelle is the fact that they get to be on projects from the very beginning. Like, she pitches the idea, they confirm it, and she will write a chapter and send it to them, like, no edits. And they were saying how they really loved getting to do that. And I remember having talked to them, and I was like, you know that I'm like, because I think this must have been around about when I was getting like my autism assessment and stuff, and we had this conversation, and I said how, for me it's difficult to edit and I don't really know what I'm doing and stuff. And I was like, is that something then that you would do with other debut authors? Because they prided themselves on always being open for submission as well. So I was like, would that be something you do? And they were like, they kind of didn't really answer. And then eventually they were just like, yeah, no, like, we want manuscripts to be polished. And I'm like, you can't sit there and say that you love getting to work on a project from the start with your established author. And then, like, I mean, I used to do a lot with them, just because I was friends with Estelle. And I think, like, whenever I tried to, like, get in there, either to work with them in publishing or, like, as a writer, it was just, like, literally not even doors slammed in the face. I just never got spoken to. And I was like, because, I mean, they used to sit there and be like, Emma, when are you writing your book? When are you writing your book? When are you going to submit it? And I was like, well, I can't edit it, and you don't want to help me. Do you know? And it was just like, it was one of those things as well, where it was just like, I get it. I get, like, publishers like books to be edited, but don't sit there and rave about how much fun it is to be on a project from the get-go when you're not going to give that grace to anyone else.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, is it's the grace, because by that point, if they've already sold the thing, it's like, well, we know she can write a book. So if we work on this, we craft a story together, we can have more input, we can have that creative thing. And I was talking to my brother about this as well, because there's a guy on his games development course who calls himself the ideas guy. And it's like, ideas are dime a dozen. Like, I could find 8 other cannibal books, and they will be written totally different to this, but they will have the same fucking premise. They will be a cannibal book set in London, Neolithic god, whatever, and it will be completely different, because the idea means fuck all. Yep. So I think it's one of those things where, like, I can absolutely understand they've got to hedge their bets with how they spend their time. And there is so many layers to different facets of publishing. And especially when you're editing, you're not just editing one book at a time. So if you are working on something with someone, that must be really satisfying to see something from start to finish. But it is by the grace of, well, we've already worked with this person and we know their book's going to sell. And they haven't got to do the hard work. They get to pipe up with the ideas, and they get to help with edits and redrafts and stuff like that. What they want when they take something on as a new project is to know that it's immediately going to sell.
Yeah.
And that's not the same thing.
The thing is, as well, though, is I would say it was almost a gamble when they took on Estelle's work, because she was, like, very Wattpad famous. And I was like, it's that sort of thing where it's like, well, everyone's already read it, though. You're gambling on the want of people to buy it.
That's not a gamble, though. Because you look at, like, certain franchise big series.
It is when the majority of the readers are not in the UK, and they only sold the rights to foreign countries after it did well in the UK.
No, but that's what I'm saying, is that's still not a gamble, because you've already proven there's an audience. In the same way that publishers adore books that can be sold on TikTok now. Like, before TikTok, it was you had to have a blog, or you had to have a YouTube, or you had to have an Instagram following, and now it's you have to have a TikTok following. Because if you can prove you can curate an audience in one place, you can curate an audience in somewhere else. If she's Wattpad famous, or even semi-Wattpad, she could have been AO3 famous. It would not have been the same gamble as it is for someone like you or I, where we're not established in that field, in that place with an audience. We have an audience somewhere else, but we're still less of a gamble than someone that doesn't have any of those things. So to them, it's not a gamble. She's got an audience. They will not have paid her as much as they could have for that first book. And like you said, they didn't sell the rights until it did well, which means they wouldn't have paid very much for it.
No. Well, I know what she got, because it was a 3-book deal, and it definitely, like, it's the sort of, if I remember what it was rightly, if I got offered that for 1 book, I probably would have been disappointed.
The average first book payout is between £2,000 and £6,000, unless you are an established author established in another field. So like Chloe Gong, for example, hit immediate acclaim because she already had an established audience, and her audience was growing very quickly the moment she started promoting her book. Richard Osman got 7 figures for the Thursday Murder Club, the very first one, because he had already established himself as a writer in other fields.
Yeah.
Well, that, and also people that watch Pointless would have been like, oh, I'll pick that up.
Well, not just Pointless, but he's one of the question writers for Only Connect, for QI. He has had podcasts, Pointless, obviously, but he has written other factual books and things like that. It's just that this was his debut novel.
Yeah.
I still don't know what his fucking problem with Folkestone was, but that's neither here nor there.
Hannah, I'm going to issue you a challenge here and now.
Oh no.
Find me a cannibal book set in London. That is
right this very second.
Well, not right now. You don't have to do it right now, but I just mean the challenge is laid down, because I would love to read a book that had a cannibal cult in it that wasn't completely racist, misogynic.
Oh no, I can't guarantee that bit because I haven't read it yet.
And transphobic. I don't need that. But like, if you can find me a book that has,
I have Googled Cannibal Cult Book London. The first thing that comes up is Tender as the Flesh.
Interesting. I haven't read that one.
And then the next one is the book that I want you to read. I think it is the 3rd book in a series. It's called Sept, Cannibal Cult by Guy N. Smith. His enemy is the eternal principle of evil made flesh, and that cover sells it. It's just a floating head.
Oh my god.
Oh, it comes up twice.
Excellent. It must be great.
I'm actually going to go to Goodreads. Guy N. Smith. Knight of the Crabs. Killer Crabs. The Slime Beast. The Origin of the Crabs. Crabs on the Rampage.
Right, this guy has a weird obsession with crabs. I don't know how I feel about
Moon. Crabs, the Human Sacrifice. Then there's one called Cannibals. I'm going to assume that's an interesting cover as well.
Why do I hate that less than the other one?
Deep in the mountain caves of Blair Long lurks a band of monsters, half-human creatures hideously mutated after generations of inbreeding. This is the dark secret of a remote highland village, a secret kept safe until a local fisherman builds some holiday chalets to attract tourists. Then the shameful conspiracy of silence is shattered at last, as the horrendous creatures shamble from their lair to mutilate and kill the unsuspecting visitors.
Oh, what are they like?
I don't know.
Gambling about killing people. It's just rude.
That feels like it's going to be problematic as heck.
What about The Sucking Pit?
Right, I'm already upset. Can we stop now?
We can stop. I
cannot find the oh, this is it. Sabbath. So The Graveyard Vultures is book 1. Cannibal Cult. Oh, it's not even got a description.
Oh, excellent.
That's how you know it's quality.
Oh wait, here we go. Mark Sabbath, ex-priest, ex-SAS trained killer.
Sorry, what?
What a mixture.
Exorcist is a man with a dreadful mission. Driven and haunted, he has to seek out and destroy his mortal enemy. The room was windowless with white tiled walls. A drainage channel ran the length of the white tiled floor, a room of coldly clinical cleanliness, designed for one purpose only: death.
Can you say that again?
By guillotine.
Can you say that sentence again, please?
A room of coldly clinical cleanliness, designed for one purpose only: death.
It was the coldly clinical cleanliness I really enjoyed.
I was amazed that I said it correctly the first time, never mind the second.
Yeah.
I know. Surprisingly, it's got 49 ratings and an average of 3.49 stars.
Oh, there you go, Lizzie. That's what I'll stick in your sub box next month, shall I?
Please no.
John gave it 1 star.
It won't be in print anymore, Lizzie. You're fine.
Like cheap whiskey, does the job, Not a pleasant experience, but still.
Oh, I mean, I think we need to end it on that, because what a note to end it on.
But no, this 3-star review is probably what could sell it to me. I'm not sure what to say about this book. 110 pages in, and 3 people have been cooked alive and then eaten. Before that, another 2 had been scoffed, but at least they died first before going in the oven. A must for vegetarians.
That's amazing. That's an amazing review.
So what's coming up this year, Hannah?
Right, this year we're doing ghost stories, and just it because it's changed from Lunar Library to from the Lunar Book Club to the Lunar Library, because it's mixing with the Lamentable Library. It is just going to be gothic books. So we've got ghostly middle grades that apparently are Christmas themed. Didn't enjoy that. And I found out after the fact, that's the bit I didn't enjoy, but also dark Gatsby retellings, things like that. That's what we've got so far, and then we've got more fun stuff to come.
Awesome.
I don't know if I'm excited for my books to arrive anymore, given these books.
No, it's a very, very different vibe, because it's just one genre, so I don't have to worry too much about like hedging my bets on.
I will say Hannah has chosen thinner books this time round.
That, first and foremost, that's what I've really tried to do, is I've tried to make them not quite such tomes.
Pick up some of them.
Although ironically, it was the bigger books that I enjoyed more.
Yes, the bigger books were better, but they were a lot of them were chunks. And like, I'm very appreciative that January and February are both very thin. I haven't opened February's book yet.
But it's not February yet. You're not allowed. To be fair, I should have put March's book available like last week, but I was in York and didn't. So
every day I like sit and I'll like, what am I trying to say? I like wake up and I'm like, right, well the post have been, and I go downstairs and like I just wait to see my little envelope sitting, and I'm like, it's not there yet. And I'm like, I've never been so excited for books to arrive, and that's why they're taking like what feels like so long this time. Yeah. I'm just like, but I also think that I heard something about Royal Mail only doing parcels in some places on Saturdays just to deal with the backlog from strikes and stuff, or something like that.
Yeah, they've got loads of issues.
I'm like,
they've also had a cyber attack, which means that sending stuff abroad isn't happening right now. So there's loads of other stuff that's been backlogged as well, which doesn't help. But you should get yours very soon.
I'm hoping it's tomorrow, because I feel like my like parcel stuff comes, if it's through Royal Mail, it's coming on Saturdays. So I'm like, I'm gonna be very upset if it's not, because like it's nearly not January. I'd like to read the January book I'm not going to read it in January.
You're not going to read it in January. Like, I'm just going to tell you now.
It could have arrived on the 1st and I wouldn't have read it in January. Let's be honest.
I didn't read it in January. I won't read it in January. Fingers crossed I get it done in Feb. But I am thinking of doing the live streams every 3 months anyway. For that reason.
Yep.
But anyway, is there anything you guys want to shout out before we end this?
I do art and I'm poor. Pay me. I'll draw you.
I love that it's been like 2 years and that's still your tagline.
I'm really poor.
Like literally, like I think the very first live show you and I did, like on Keris's channel, you were like, I do art, I'm poor, pay me.
I'd never change. Lots of things change, but I still stay the same.
I stay the same.
Other than go check out my latest videos, I've got my best books of 2022 coming out tomorrow afternoon. So I'd appreciate if people come and take a look at that. On my TBR game, I've got a new one. I need to film my February one, and honestly, I'm terrified. So if you want to go check out that video, it's a good time. Not for me, for everyone else watching, it's a good time. But I didn't.
Well, in that case, that's what I'm gonna watch. I didn't bully you tonight, so I can go and get some enjoyment.
You need to catch up, Emma. You've been far too nice.
It's because you can see me. I'm not hiding behind a screen anymore.
Cool. Right. I will catch up with you very soon. Thank you for joining us, and bye.